All right, we are going to start with county, and I would like to open the June 27th County Commissioners meeting. We have announcements.
Just one announcement that this meeting is being video and audio recorded.
Is there any public comment? Hearing none, is there any new business? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes and warrants.
I move approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And moving on now to official business, planning office request for execution of quitclaim deed from county to town for parcel of land on Heller's Way. Are there any questions? No?
Nope.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to public hearings, we have 3 different items, and they're hearings to consider the taking of permanent easements over certain lands for purposes for which public ways are used in Nantucket.
You just need to open the public.
Open the public. I'd like to open the public hearing for item A, which is a permanent sidewalk easement over the portion of Lot 1 lying between the face of the building at 20 Straight Wharf and sideline of Lot 20, and the portion of Lot 20 measuring about 14 feet wide and 44 feet long.
Hello, Madam Chairman and Board. This is an item that has been, I think, discussed by you all for quite some time. It's included a discussion in our staff report. It's a real anomaly here where this particular area sticks out into the public way. I know that the board has had several discussions about wanting to proceed ahead with this. And like this hearing, like the others that are before you tonight, are road-related hearings. So if there are objections to this, there will need to be a second hearing. So just keep that in mind in your deliberations. I think this was intended to be the first meeting, and that there would in fact be a follow-up meeting later to have a discussion. I know the property owner is here, so I'll let you get on with that.
So you just clarify what you meant by if there are objections and this is a road take, just so that the folks at home and the audience understands that process.
Sure. So in other eminent domain takings that are not related to road matters, for example, when we do open space takings and other things, there's not a requirement for a second hearing. Here, this is a taking related to road purposes. And again, town council is here to give you the specific sites if you need it. But basically, if there is an objection to any of these 3 takings that are coming up, so this one, Amelia Drive and Pinecrest, there is a statutory requirement for a second hearing at a later time. And that will be advertised and scheduled in consultation with town council and town administration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any comment from the public?
Madam Chair, Sarah Alger for the property owner, 20 Straight Wharf LLC. I just want to ask, just procedurally, are you doing people in favor and then people in opposition, or are you just opening it up in general? Because I want to speak in opposition.
My plan was to open it up generally.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Well, so I am speaking in opposition. And to start, I just wanted to provide you with these photographs just to give you a reminder of the before and after of 20 Straight Wharf. Basically, there are 2 things at work here. First, I just want to mention, the eminent domain power that you have is a very powerful tool, and you're taking someone's property rights away from them and property that they feel very strongly about. So, and the property owner has very little recourse in an eminent domain taking. Their rights really are mostly to get some sort of damage award when all is said and done. Because of that, we hope that you will use this power wisely and judiciously and in a fair manner. And secondly, and sort of tangentially, just the way that businesses seem to be being treated in town at the moment, people who come here and invest in the community, and particularly in town, seems to be slightly hostile and unwelcoming at the moment. And I'm not sure where that's coming from and why that is. And I don't think it should be the case. And I just want to give you a little history of how we got to where we are tonight, because there was something in the packet that made me think that there's been kind of a disconnect here. So June 5, 2012, my client Bernard Chu, who's here to answer any questions you might have tonight, bought this property and undertook a significant and substantial renovation. He invested a lot of money into this property. He cares very, very deeply about it. And as part of that renovation and making this investment in the community, he voluntarily removed the staircase that you see in the before pictures without any request from the town and without any attempt to build back out over his property. I know that everyone felt that that was the sidewalk, but there's never been, until tonight anyway, a taking of that sidewalk. So he could have rebuilt his property really up to his property line in a zero front yard setback situation. He opted not to do that because I think he wanted to be a good community member. There was never any sort of acknowledgement or recognition on anyone's part that he did that, which I think is kind of a missed opportunity. Shortly after that, I happened to be at a meeting of the Board of Selectmen, and it was brought up, although it wasn't on the agenda, what are we going to do about taking away those parking spaces now that Toby West's family doesn't own this property anymore? And it was quickly kind of moved over, but it made me realize, so while Mr. Lest's family owned this property, everyone was willing to let these spaces and situation with the sidewalk continue. But as soon as someone like Mr. Chu comes in, it's suddenly a different story. In December 16, 2015, at the select board meeting, the select board met in executive session, which I think is the first time that these takings, at least to my knowledge, were discussed. Nothing came of that. We were kind of wondering what was going to happen. Nothing came of that until around June 23rd, 2017, when we received a letter from the town manager. After receiving that letter, we made several attempts to get a meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss this. First, July 24th, then again, August 31st, and then finally September 8th. We were never able to get a meeting together, and one of the things we were told is that there was no appraisal, and therefore it was not appropriate to be meeting with us. Finally, around November 13, 2017, we were finally able to have a meeting with the town manager, the planning director, my client, and town council Vicky Marsh was on the telephone. We had a very cordial meeting. Mr. Chu indicated that he did not want to fight with the town, that he wanted to work with the town to try to come up with a solution. He proposed swapping spaces, giving up the sidewalk and the spaces here in exchange for spaces somewhere else. No other proposal was made or received. Everyone went away, and we expected to hear something back. Around December 3rd, 2017, I heard informally that the select board had met and was not interested in either working with Mr. Chu or meeting with us, and that our proposal had been unacceptable, and that there was no forthcoming proposal in response, and that we would be receiving a formal letter advising us of the results. We never received any letter. We followed up a number of times. We never had, no appraisal, no offer of compensation, or no alternate proposal. In the late winter, early spring, and I'm not sure exactly what dates this happened, Mr. Vorse was in contact again to see if Mr. Chu would voluntarily allow the sidewalk widening to proceed, because it was starting at the Easy Street end and progressing up Straight Wharf. Unfortunately, we couldn't agree to that because the sidewalk widening was widening into the parking spaces, and without some sort of resolution on the parking spaces, we couldn't allow the sidewalk widening to go forward. We didn't hear anything else until sometime around the end of May, beginning of June, when I heard from Mr. Vorse again saying that a taking would be scheduled and that we'd get notice in the mail. I guess that's the formal response from our meeting in November of 2017. That formal notice of this week's meeting was mailed on the 14th and received on the 19th. So when I open the packet and I see an indication negotiations with him, presumably Mr. Chu, were not productive, I was kind of disheartened because I thought, well, no, they weren't productive, but we tried to make them productive. We really did try to make them productive, and we got really nothing back. I think we made every effort to try to at least attempt to meet with the town and to work to find a solution. So we're here. There's still no appraisal. The only suggestion we've had coming from the town was a suggestion in the town manager's original letter almost a year ago, suggesting that he might want to voluntarily release his rights. And of course, he doesn't, but he does still want to work with you. But I do have some specific objections that I just want to make you aware of before I turn this over to him to let him talk to you about what he'd like to propose. First of all, there's no formal plan of the areas being taken. The notice that was sent references taking an easement over the portion of Lot 1 lying between the face of the building at 20 Straight Wharf and the sideline of Lot 20. But it doesn't reference a plan. And the only plan that was referenced in the notice, which was Land Court Plan 10222E, is not a plan of 20 Straight Wharf. It's a plan of adjacent properties. And where, yeah, that's the plan. And where 20 Straight Wharf is shown on that property, on that plan, there's no building depicted. I'm not aware of any record plan that shows the current building face on 20 Straight Wharf. I see in the packet that you do have a copy of the as-built plan from the building department, but that's not sufficient for a taking. It's just what it says it is. It was an as-built plan used for the purposes of getting a CO. And I don't think the taking area is dimensioned or shown in any way. The other issue with the notice is that the language in it seems to be somewhat garbled. It starts out by saying that it's a sidewalk easement, but then it references that additional land is being taken, and at the end it says for all purposes for which public roads are used on Nantucket. So it's not even really clear what land's being taken, what it's being taken for, and what land is being taken for what purpose. I'm guessing, because I kind of know what the goal is, that some of it's supposed to be sidewalk and some of it's supposed to be road, but there's absolutely no way to tell that from either the plans or the notice. The other thing that bothered me is the posted notice of this meeting seems to be insufficient, and I wondered if it might not be a violation of the open meeting law. If you look at item 1A of section 7, public hearings of the agenda that was posted, it only references a taking of permanent sidewalk easement, but it doesn't make any reference to the public roadway purpose taking, which I think is part of what is intended for where the parking spaces are, at least a portion of the parking spaces on Straight Wharf. So I think the public notice of this meeting is probably flawed. But apart from that, because you can fix all of those things, get a plan, publicly notice it properly, we can come back and do this again. I don't understand how you can be voting on something where you don't know exactly what you're taking. You don't know exactly what you're taking for what purpose. You don't have an appraisal, so you don't know what monies you're committing the county to paying. It just seems premature, and that you shouldn't take a vote at all until A, you know exactly what you're taking and why, and B, you know the potential money that you're opening the town up to having to pay as a damage award. So those are kind of the legal points. I think Mr. Chu would like to talk to you about maybe some other ideas.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Hi, Commissioner. I'm Bernard Chu. It's spelled CHIU, for those of you who don't know. I had lived on the island for over 20 years. And when I purchased the properties, obviously, the parking is a huge part of the appeal to me. Yeah. And, I'm here tonight. I'm not here to debate or to ask you how much compensation it should be, because I don't know. But what I do know is the parking space is very valuable for the space. And it is my entire home. I come here very often. Yeah. And I want to be a good community member. Yeah. And I certainly understand. And I saw that part of the street has the sidewalk has been enlarged. Yeah. And there's a strip that left the way it was. And that was my property. Yeah. And I think there are ways we can find solution to this without going to this extreme of taking the right away from a private owner. Yeah. And I want to work with you. Yeah. And I have been saying that for the last 2 years, and I continue want to work with you. Yeah. And I think the time can go what you want, and I can keep what I want too. Right? Now you can enlarge the sidewalk, yeah, and I have no problem with that. But next to the sidewalk, there's still plenty of space for my parking, yeah, and those are my space. Yeah, let me keep them. Yeah, and if you go back to the road, you look at the rest of the road has been enlarged, and there's still plenty of parking there. And as a matter of fact, there's still legal parking for the public. So don't take the space away from me in front of my building, because I need that. Those are very important to me. And as I get older, I don't want to be driving around 2 hours in time to look for space. But those are my space. Yeah. And I can give you a sidewalk, no problem. Take it. Yeah. And I'm not even asking for compensation for that. Yeah. But please consider what's important to me, and also consider what's important to you. Yeah. And I'm happy to find happy media for everybody. There's really no reason for us to fight here.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is there any other comment from the public? And I'm not sure, Andrew, if there's anything to clarify or response, or if that's done now or after it's closed. That's closed.
Well,
So-
We're not gonna
well, I think
close.
the comments from town council may inform or create other responses from the owners council. So I'd personally like to hear from town council, because there's some statements of fact that have been offered, and I'd like to know the town council's position on that.
Hi, Vicki Marsh. I participated in the conversation with Mr. Chu, with Sarah Alger and Libby Gibson, the town manager, and with Andrew. We did at the time listen to their concerns about the parking space. There was some question about the title to this property, whether the easements, whether the parking spaces are easements, or whether they were title and fee to this space. And at the time, we had not completed our title work on this. We did complete it after our conversations, and it was our opinion that the research that had been done showed that these were easements and not fee title. In discussing this further with Sarah Alger, she felt that she was of the opinion that these spaces were in a fee, and therefore maybe worth more money in compensation to Mr. Chu than if they were just easements that would be taken. So we have engaged to go back and do some additional title work, and it has not been completed yet, but it will be. And so that's one issue as far as the title to this property. The other thing is the appraisal. Originally, the appraisal to this property was done on the basis of the fact that it was an easement. Again, we were running on the on the concept that the parking spaces were easements in Straight Wharf and not fee title. So we did receive an appraisal, I believe the town did receive an appraisal for an easement value. And then we've gone back to the appraiser subsequently, and I believe we're waiting for his report on the appraised value if it was in fee. So it's my understanding that the Director of Planning decided to proceed with this preliminary hearing to be able to see if there were any objections to this taking. I can't speak to the notice that was posted because unfortunately I wasn't a party to it, and I did not review the notice, but if Ms. Alger's, references to the deficiencies in the notice are correct, I certainly would be willing to take a look at it and see if her opinions are valid. And if so, we may need to repost this hearing, depending upon what I find. But that being said, it goes back to the fact that I think that there needs to be discussions perhaps between the town and Mr. Chu once we've determined the title status and the value to this property that we would be offering as damages in the event that the county voted to actually take a sidewalk easement and the spaces. Do you have any questions?
Just, do we, to me, it'd be interesting to know if we're asking for a taking of an easement or fee title before, because right now it says the taking of an easement, doesn't it?
Right.
So how do we?
The town, right, it was our opinion that this was an easement. However, we have gone back and done some additional research and it hasn't been completed yet. I haven't
Okay,
received
so
the
it may
final
be
report.
premature.
Perhaps,
Okay.
yes. Okay, all right. So, I stand corrected, the Director of Planning said that the county intends to take what would be an easement and not the fee in the parking spaces.
Okay.
I have a process question. So if there's an objection, we have to do a second hearing.
Correct.
But if it was the open meeting law violation or wasn't clear, do we have to redo this hearing? And
Correct.
then go through another second hearing possibly?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
We would need to repost,
Okay.
to conform with the requirements for the advertisement, yes.
Thank you.
Any more? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments from the public? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. In terms of, we have to verify the open meeting law violation first. Correct. And is it then inappropriate to have any discussion now? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay. So is there any discussion amongst the board?
Do we have the discussion if we think there's an open meeting law violation? No. So we can't.
We can't.
So I don't,
Okay.
I think we should end discussion,
Okay. Perfect.
personally.
Thank you.
Table it?
Yeah.
Do we need a motion to table or?
Well, no matter what, if there was no open meeting law violation, there'll be a second hearing. So
we-
you don't need to table it because they
Well,
closed the.
it may be a third hearing, is what we're saying.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
you don't have to table it because you've already closed the public hearing. So a new one, no matter what. will
Oh,
be
in terms of the,
scheduled.
okay.
So
So I guess we just take no action?
take no action. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll verify the open meeting law violation.
Move on to the next one.
Yeah.
In my notes and my apology for not responding, all that's going to be saved for later? Darn. I was going to sound really intelligent, too.
Try and save it for later.
I was going to try to.
Okay, so moving on to B, in relation to the entire private way known as Amelia Drive, between the sideline of Old South Road to the sideline of Tacoma Way. Andrew, I'd like to open the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on this, I think you're all familiar with this particular way, which runs between Old South Road and Tacoma Way. This has been a street that's been on the right-of-way committee's list for a number of years, as identified in the report. This, again, It's intended to get any public testimony, if there is any for this. And if there are objections, which we don't have any record of at this moment, we would schedule a second hearing at a later time. In the event that there are no objections, we would like you to continue this matter so final documents would be put together. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment from the public? Hearing none, close before continue.
No, if you're going to continue the public hearing, you have to just do it to a date certain. So the planning director should give you an idea of when it should be continued to.
But we can discuss it before we,
Close.
I want to, I mean, you've closed the public hearing.
Not yet.
No.
I was
okay.
asking.
going to, because you're going to continue.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But did you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
So we would suggest continuing this to your September real estate meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'd just be interested again for the public to have Andrew just kind of describe what the plan is, why we're doing this, why we think it's of benefit to the community, because I personally think it's a good idea. So.
Sure. Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So again, I think you're familiar with this particular area. I think this road has been in existence for some time. When it was originally approved, wasn't clear that this area, what it would be when it was finalized. It was in a mixed commercial area, the RC2 zoning district. So it wasn't clear, was it going to be residential? Was it going to be commercial? I think, as you know, it's developed out as a commercial area and is now in a commercial district. So the town, I'm sure Libby's office, other public offices have fielded complaints about this particular road for a long time. There's on-street parking that occurs. There's been blockage of the road. I think most people look at this and assume it's a public road, that it's paved, it is now a connector. So for some time, at least at discussion levels at the planning board and others, there's been, and as I said, right-of-way committee has asked that this become part of the public road network. So finally, we got to a point where one of the applicants, which was the market at the corner of Old South Road and Tacoma, as part of their special permit, they provided a $10,000, I guess, gift account to create the plan that was done, which you see up there. And once this becomes a public road, we would be requesting that there be some forums to discuss what level of improvement or changes might occur here, whether it be, and I've heard all kinds of different opinions from many people about should it be a one-way, should it be kept as is with better striping, should there be some minor adjustments to the curb in places. So again, we have a pretty detailed plan that shows where all that is. Town manager and I have talked about what kind of budgeting we should set aside for this, and we're going to set some meetings up soon with the DPW director as well. So that's all to come. And again, before we start spending a lot of resources, we feel it's important to establish it, that it is in fact a public way, and then we go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So in September, if it goes through and we take it, then the process starts of all the public outreach and where people can come and give their ideas, and there'll be lots of access from the public to weigh in
Correct.
after that.
Yep.
And this was part of the Six Fairgrounds overall plan.
It was included as part of the overall circulation of the area as well, that this petition would come forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I think the Six Fairgrounds Agreement committed us to this,
Okay.
although this is the first time that we as a board have discussed it. So,
So with no more public comment at the moment, we'll continue this
September 26th.
to September 26th.
Just need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
are we going to discuss anything, or are we going to wait and discuss it September?
I would say wait, personally, unless you have,
Okay.
that's up to the chair.
I think if you have comments, that's a long ways away. So if there's something on top of your mind, I'd be open to discussing it now.
Right. Okay. I mean, I look and I think that it's, I think we need to have on-street parking on that road, no matter what happens. I think it should be well-designed. There should be traffic calming there. Otherwise, if there's no on-street parking, it'll become a raceway and a cut-through. I think some of what happens there now is appropriate because it slows people down a little bit. And I think, so from a good planning perspective, I think a lot of those streets through there should be connected, not cut off. And then in situations like this, people who have sort of listened to me for a while, I think sometimes betterments are appropriate. I think a lot of these subdivisions, a lot of these things that were built out, sort of, and I pushed hard for out by the airport. So, for that whole Lover's Lane area, a lot of those subdivisions were, sort of, the streets weren't done great and they didn't last. And, and I feel bad for the neighbors, but the price of that was vested in what was done. And so I think the town, if it's going to take things, the town should be, taking them should be taking them when they're the way the town wants them. So, and we'll have that discussion later. I want us to be thinking about it. I know a lot of people that are there. I've talked to them. A couple of the people that live there would love it widened slightly and the parking to stay because they need it for their businesses. And they wouldn't be, at least a couple I've talked to, wouldn't be opposed to paying $50 a month or a couple $100 a year to improve it. And so I just think we should be thinking about those type of issues as well. If we're going to fix everything, I don't know where if we're going to fix everything everywhere, I don't know where the money's going to come from. So that's just my typical discussion.
Thank you. So with that, then we'll move on to item C, the internal roadways of the so-called Pinecrest Drive subdivision, including an easement. And I'd like to open the public hearing.
Hello again. So this matter has come before the board, again, to have at least a discussion about the concept here. And there's not a final plan ready for your action. But it's really a necessary discussion that we need to have before additional work is committed of both staff and others that would look at this. I gave a report in your packet, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. This is part of a long-term discussion with area residents. It really began back in 2005 with some that are no longer there and some that are here in the room, to talk about how to deal with probably one of the weirdest and worst divisions of land. No offense to anybody on this, but there's some really strange lot patterns here that started with these 40-foot wide sections in the front that go to these sort of 10-foot strips that go and attach to the back. And that was done at the time, I think, because those lots were created through approval not required, which is a simpler process than going through an actual subdivision. And I think the trade-off, and again, I wasn't here at the time, but I think the trade-off was, in fact, an overall lower density was achieved here. If you look at the history, there was sort of a secondary nosh-up that covered parts of this land and other land to the west that never happened, because at the time there was some sewer capacity issues were in play. So anyway, the point here is the layout of the internal roadway network, which follows the existing roadways, regularizes a situation to a more, I guess, normal layout of roadways. This property is very complex because of the 10-foot strips sort of going through the whole thing. And so it's something that the individual neighbors to go through a process would be incredibly difficult and time-consuming. I know they've looked into it to see if they could do it themselves, but by the town assisting here, there's an opportunity, I think, to proactively take some actions here which meet the neighborhood objectives and the town's objectives as well. And those include extending water and sewer into this area without going through individual easements from the adjoining properties, to an overall lowering of the potential density and build out here that is that was allowed when the property existed in the RC2 district. So as you've heard me talk about, the RC2 district is one of our highest density districts. It's 5,000 square feet, 50% ground cover, 40-foot wide lots. And the neighbors worked with me and the planning board last year to change the zoning for a significant portion of the interior part of this from R5 to R10. And what that did is it cut the potential ground cover in half from 50 to 25%. It doubled the lot size from 5 to 10,000. So it, through their own sort of actions, it reduced the development potential that at least existed at that time. So, and I think you'll hear from them is they like their area the way it is. They want the qualities there to continue. And the fact that they're working with us is actually very positive. So the step to lay out the roadways, again, comes with some other agreements that were laid out in the memo. So even though it's a public road, the town would enter into agreements with them to conduct the maintenance, so it would not be a cost to maintain the road for the town. There would be development restrictions on the interior, which effectively lowered the density further to roughly R20, which is half acre. So it's gone from 1/8 acre to half acre, which is a significant reduction here. And they would, one thing I didn't include in the memo, they would pay for the legal costs because there is quite a bit of work that needs to be done, and which will involve our town council here, Vicki, to put that together, which would include the town's right to enforce the restrictions and the agreements about the roads, et cetera. So that's it in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment?
My name is Mary Ann Hanley. In my capacity as trustee of October Nominating Trust, I'm the owner of the real property located at 98A Old South Road. I filed a formal objection to this proposed taking. I believe that this plan that's in front of you, as Andrew said, it's not the final taking plan, and it really shouldn't be the subject of a public hearing at this point in time. It's unclear to me that these are in fact roadway easements, and if the real issue is water and sewer, perhaps rather than taking roadways, all you need to do is take sewer and water easements. There are a list of conditions that supposedly the homeowners have agreed to. I have not received any notification about this. The first time I heard about this proposed taking plan was when I opened my mail Monday afternoon and saw the notice. I believe that I'm not even sure if legally the town can take roadways and still expect the homeowners to maintain them and pay for them. There's questions in my mind, would there be public parking on these roadways? We hear all about Uber drivers coming from the Cape and sleeping in their cars at night, and this might be the new Pinecrest Motel. I'm just very concerned about how this has been presented and what the potential issues are. There's certain areas where there's that lollipop curve there. I don't know why that's set up the way it is. Is that for parking? Then there's some crosshatched areas over on the other side of the property. There's no designation what those are. And as you can see, it was supposed to be some kind of a plan to take land, but it's been crossed out and things have been written in. So it's really quite unclear what's going on. Since I have objected, this certainly will need to continue on to another hearing. And I think it would probably make sense for the homeowners to actually get together with the proponents of the project. Andrew, I'm assuming he knows who they are. I certainly haven't been contacted, and I don't have any information. And rather than spend a whole lot more time on this evening, I would suggest that it simply, after other public comment is made, that it get continued so we can figure out what the heck is going on here.
Thank you. Andrew?
And, you know, I want to just make it clear that I've worked with a group of homeowners, and I really did think that everyone was included. So I expressed that to them today, that, you know, they appear to have missed Ms. Hanley's client. So again, this, as I said earlier, this was intended to be basically, you know, a neighborhood scale project. And, you know, maybe they can, the other homeowners can talk about how, unfortunately, that person was missed. But I think the particular agreements and everything that we're talking about, again, the intent was to have an initial discussion with the board about the concept, and then have the second follow-up meeting that would really nail down most of those questions that were raised.
Thank you. And yeah.
Hi, my name is Jeff Smith, 98 Old South Road. I bought into this neighborhood about 6 years ago, and I've worked constantly with Arthur Reed and Dan Malloy to try to figure this out privately, and went into Andrew's office quite a bit. Thank you for all your time. There are quite a few members of our neighborhood, and I'm not going to say association because there is no association. It's absolutely defunct. Over the last 6 years, we haven't had any meetings. So, Marion, you know, your client Donald, there hasn't been, this information has not been disseminated. There's probably 75% of the homeowners here have no idea. You know, I just looked at the plan, this plan yesterday for the first time. So it would be nice to have a little bit more time. I know this is going to be continued anyway. But we need to get together as an association in July or August and agree upon something and then bring it back here. But I think this is a really good step in the right direction.
Thank you. Any further public comment? As there's been 2 requests to continue, as opposed to the automatic second hearing, is it more appropriate to continue? No. To close?
You have objections, you have to.
So we have to have it anyways. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion now?
I just want to kind of try to figure out what's happening in basic terms. So if this was to go forward, all the details were worked out, and all the homeowners were happy, it would lower the amount of ground cover, but allow them to build more dwellings. Is that too simple? To
I think that's a question for
oversimplifying
Andrew.
it? Taking out of RC2.
Well, the fact that it already moved out of RC2 has lowered the amount of dwellings. The fact that what we're talking about here lowers the amount of dwellings even further, because there will be additional restrictions. The interior lots that you see that are significantly oversized, again, if someone was motivated to assemble those and, you know, create a subdivision of some kind, there would be more capacity within here than what we've talked about with the neighbors. So the R10 was a first step, which again cut in half the number of lots and the number of ground cover, or the amount of ground cover that could be built. The next step with the neighbors is to work with them to further refine those restrictions again, and these would be restrictions that the town enforces, not private parties, because I think, as you know, many of the private deed restrictions expire after 30 years, and then you just go with the underlying zoning. So we've moved ahead in a number of other neighborhoods that I think probably most of you can remember, where deed restrictions were expiring, and we changed the zoning in advance of that. So again, this is a proactive situation, and the total number of dwelling units at the end of the day will be less. Now, the way that lots are currently structured, there's a limit to them because of the odd, the 10-foot strips and sort of the geometry of it all. But one of the lots is actually has frontage in the back on Hinsdale Road, and it's not part of this particular group. That's already been divided under the RC2. So it's already happened, at least in one case. Others, well, that's one, Erica. That's an older one. But if you go to the far western corner at the top, that one there. So again, the rest of the group is willing to work together on the remaining properties.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts?
My only comment is this is a busy time of year, and I don't know if this is so time sensitive. I would give it as much time as it takes for the consensus to be reached, and if that takes 3 months, I wouldn't object to that.
Right. I would like to see sort of what the potential is now under this zoning versus what it will be under the other thing, just on a chart. And I want to commend Andrew, because I do think the process that you're using with the individuals and with the neighborhoods has proven to be a positive one. And I think, in this case, but I just want to make sure that we understand what the impact is. And then I will say that this kind of stuff is outlawed now. You can't, take a little piece of frontage and drag it out. What were they, pork chop subdivisions? That was the name for these back in the day. It was pork chop subdivision. And the idea of it was you had frontage on one road, and you'd bring a little line to it and go all the way out to the properties so that you could do it a little more easily. And that is no longer allowed. But you'll still see it if you look. I think it's in Nantucket some. You can still find them around.
Right, and I'd just like to make sure that we make sure that all of the neighbors have been contacted in the end. And if there's any questions, Mary Ann's points about any of the legalities of it, just make sure that we have that set out. Anything else? Okay. Moving on to commissioners' reports and comments. None? And is there a motion?
Motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the select board meeting for June 27th. We'll call it to order. We have a couple of changes to the agenda. We're going to table consent item number 4 and number 6. So those are going to be tabled. And we're also going to move the committee reports for the select board. We're going to do that to the end. So you're welcome, everyone, for that. We decided when we put this agenda together to put the select board reports and comments at the beginning so we could go over the committee reports and the Surfside Crossing letter so you didn't have to sit through everything else. Thank you later. Okay, announcements?
This morning's board meeting is being video and audio recorded. We have our second Coastal Resiliency Forum being held on Wednesday, July 18th at 6 p.m. Here in this room. We had a prior one at the end of May, and we hope the public will attend. We have a pond forum we've scheduled. We talked about this a month or so ago. That is going to be held on Monday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. in this room, and we're going to be sending out an invite on that shortly. If people are interested in it, we'll have some information on the town website. Town offices are closed next Wednesday, July 4th. The next board meeting after tonight will be Wednesday, July 11th, and then we are into the summer schedule where we meet twice in July, twice in August. DPW director is going to give us a quick overview of a landfill entrance change that is being worked on. I wanted to run it by you all, show you quickly before we get too far down the road with it, because it's going to be going into effect fairly soon, within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Rob McNeil, DPW. So in sort of an answer to, thank you, the traffic that's backed up fairly regularly during the height of the season out onto Nantucket Road, we've been looking at several improvements to the operation out at Waste Options, including starting with relabeling and reconstituting the chutes for the residential drop-off for recycling products. But more to traffic, felt like adding a third lane specific to the scale house would be able to more quickly separate the traffic from one another, the commercial scale house traffic from the residential drop-off traffic would help eliminate a decent amount of traffic that's now stacking out on the road. In addition to those two changes, we're looking to reverse the circulation of traffic through the parking lot for the residential drop-off, beginning with a left-only turn lane at a stop condition at this location. That would bring folks in, would add formal parking to the left-hand side. We would put a center, essentially a crosswalk location for everybody that's parked to be able to safely cross, to try to centralize that activity. And then what happens by doing that is you end up allowing a decent amount of queuing to occur for people that are waiting for a parking space, essentially utilizing the site better as opposed to utilizing Nantucket Road way out on the street. So these, right now, DPW is working on essentially widening the throat from the gate down to the access road to DPW. And we expect that to be paved early next week. Thereafter, people will probably see some cones out there to start looking at sort of training people to get into these locations before the pavement markings go down. And we will start working with the new circulation as soon as we can properly mark it to let people know. So I just wanted to give people a heads up. There is some accommodations for people that are returning after going over the scale that need to go back over the scale. Those accommodations are being made generally out in this area to try to keep these other areas free of truck traffic as much as possible. So there's changes that are happening. Wanted to let everyone know about it. And it's a work in progress. We just want to keep people posted.
Rob, I have one question. And you answered this to me a couple of days, but I told people in May, why can't we just exit people out by take it or leave it right out to Nantucket at the end of the parking lot?
So we're surrounded on this side, on two sides by land bank property. So we're not the owners there.
I got that question a couple times. I think it's helpful.
I had a friend tell me how excited he was that you were doing this today. He said it was,
that's good.
Yeah.
One last thing, just as far as the recycling goes, I've had a lot of questions recently, and there was a rumor apparently that we were no longer recycling, that everything was just getting landfilled. So we are in fact recycling still. What the combination here is doing is opening up paper chutes that were dedicated to paper. The paper market internationally is really in the toilet. So we're repurposing those chutes for what we expect to be a long haul here. So those, by repurposing the paper chutes into cardboard, plastic, and tin and aluminum, that allows people to cycle through those areas faster because there's more bins to be able to utilize. So paper should be included in your regular solid waste, your trash, because it goes through the composter.
The only other thing I saw in a late email today that the haulers are going to be able to go in on the 4th.
They will.
And I think that's amazing. And yeah, that's great.
One last thing, just to add distinction to plastics. I know there's a lot of talk about which plastics should I be putting in the plastic bin. All of them, because they are sorted. They're sorted in the facility. The plastics that are recyclable get baled and get shipped off island. The plastics that are not recyclable get packaged and put into bulky waste, which is sent off island as construction and demolition debris. Very important distinction because it's tons and tons of unrecyclable plastic. If it doesn't go into the plastics and get sorted, it goes into your general trash, it goes into the landfill. So that is not a good thing. We want to make sure all plastics in every form go into the plastic bins.
What about compostable plastics?
That is compostable.
But
And
where,
it's not plastic, it's corn, correct?
some are, some aren't, but yeah,
Should be.
it should
You
be.
can also check with the manufacturer. There's also, we need to understand the composter and its abilities a little bit more. And we've been talking to a lot of folks about running some sort of a test or a pilot project to run through what your board has mandated to go to for compostable single-use plastics, if in fact the composter is able to compost them. So that's something that we're hoping to shoot for in the next year.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I brought a bunch of them a number of years ago for that test and was told it wasn't possible, but I think it is possible. You know, we can track great whites in the ocean with beepers. We should be able to, track some compostable plates through the digester.
Well,
I think we have that ability.
I'm looking forward to it.
And the reason I'm asking this is I've spoken to a lot of the manufacturers of these items, and in other communities, if a load of biodegradable has a little bit of oil plastic in it, the load's no good. If a load of oil has some biodegradable in it, it's no good. If you're burning it, you can burn both, but if you're recycling, it makes the entire thing, tarnished. So I think it is something, as we sort of work through this, to figure out what's the right way to do it.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Rob. Is that all of it?
Yeah, did you mention the new business item?
Sorry?
Did you mention the new? Okay.
No, he didn't, but we need to.
Okay. We're going to move over to public comment. Is there anything anybody would like to speak today that's not on the agenda? I can do that in public comment. Seeing none, we have one item on new business today, a noise bylaw request. That's going to be up here. This came in, was it timely to get into the packet? I believe this is something that comes in annually.
Make a motion to approve the
For a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That was quick. Okay, approval of minutes for June 6th. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pending contracts. Is there any questions from the board? Comments? Seeing none, is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to get a review of the CRC.
Oh, yeah.
Contracts.
Did I ask you to do that, Rachel? A little quick. I'm sorry, I totally forgot about that.
That's okay.
We
It
had
was
just-
more if there were questions.
We had just asked about maybe a brief mention on some of the really good human services programs that are going on in the community.
Sure.
If you could touch
I
on
thought the
them.
Chair Dorothy Hertz might have been here, so I don't want to step over her either. Not sure why this is. This was a really good cycle. We have a really good group on the contract review committee, and they took a lot of time vetting. So a lot of the concerns and issues that we had in the past were a little bit more in-depth reviewed this cycle. We have a new protocol that went into place to help us address either late contracts submissions or amendments that might have gone into play. So one that we had was the initial request was much lower, and then through the process and talking with the actual nonprofit group, was determined that they probably could have asked for more to cover some of the other programming that they were looking at, which they ended up putting an amendment in. So that was a new process for us. So we did, the board approved a new protocol, which was great. A lot of these are recurring programs that we've provided support for in the past. And there's a lot more additions that are happening. So health imperatives, for instance, we're adding a lot more programs. They're expanding. They've learned that a lot of what they're doing is not reaching the full amount that they could. not for any other reason other than staffing or not reaching out to certain populations. So they've added a lot of additional programs that they were requesting funding for. And so other than that, besides a few other expansions with their general programming, everything was kind of about the same that we normally see in the past. There is a little bit of an intake, a little bit more of a change, for instance, with Fairwind. So a lot that we provided with behavioral health related services in the past was more to offset costs of low income or people without insurance providing those services. And because they've, like many of the others, have learned to expand their programming, they opened their behavioral walk-in clinic, and that we were able to change their request to accommodate 50% of the funding is going to helping to support their walk-in clinic, which they think will also field a lot of the intake. And then we're still providing that support to the low income or underinsured individuals. It's just getting filtered through their organization a little bit differently. So unless there's specific questions, I think that ultimately most of the programming is ultimately the same. Again, I know some people always have this question and they may not have been at town meeting, but Martha's Vineyard Community Services is not providing funding from Nantucket to Martha's Vineyard. They are a service that, even though that is their name, they do service Cape and the other islands. I just wanted to make that clarification as well, just so that people in the audience might see that and wonder why we're sending money that way. But that's a great service that provides a lot of support to individual families and children on the island as well. Any specific questions on them? We've been really good. The other thing that we did this year is, I think that understanding exactly what's been funded and making sure that it's going towards what the grant applications requested, we tightened up that process a little bit as well. So what normally happened in the past is when they provided their quarterly invoice, they gave a quarterly report. It wasn't very well vetted, so to speak. It also wasn't very detailed or really matched what the request was. So Elder Services, for example, might have just said, hey, this is how many meals we provided. But they also do so many other things when they're providing those meals. So we really dove into that information. So instead of just saying we did X number of meals at the senior center, we're also wondering how many meals are being delivered to the home through the Meals on Wheels program, and maybe what is then fielding elders at risk at home or things like that. So there's a lot of things that, even though that's the direct service, there's a lot of things embedded in that direct service that aren't really seen in just numbers. So hopefully once we get a lot of those quarterly reports that really do tie into the grant request and the grant programming, it'll help with the future years and really understanding exactly what this money is going towards. I think it's great, and hopefully we can continue to increase what we provide to them. I think we had about $485,000 in requests, so we were almost able to fully fund all the requests that we received. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move off, one other comment. Page 23 is the picture of the yacht club. We're doing a license before we get an easement. And I think, I just want to I think we all thank the yacht club for working with the town and making the sidewalks possible. They're allowing us to widen the sidewalk onto their property slightly, to add a fire hydrant on their property rather than in the middle of the sidewalk. And I think it's it's something positive, and I think other businesses downtown, if they have the opportunity, should provide the same benefit, because that helps all of us. And it doesn't hurt them. And so I think they were leaders, and I think it's great. If you look at the picture, everyone that's driven down there, that road and that sidewalk is way better. So
It's a good collaboration for public benefit.
it is. And I think in some of the meetings we had, some of the other neighbors on Easy Street were offering similar things, and it came from the individuals themselves. So I think there's a good public-private to try to improve the downtown. It's great.
Thank you, Matt. I just got a note that nobody can hear me in the back. It's on here. Can somebody check? There we go. Can the control room raise my mic volume?
Move it up a little too. I feel like it's below you.
What you're supposed to put? Hello, checking. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Now y'all can really hear me. Okay, so was there a motion on that for the approval?
Motion
So
to
moved.
Next second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and motion passes. All right, on the select board reports and comments. So we're going to start with review of preliminary town comments on Surfside Crossing 40B application to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I just want to frame kind of how this is going to go tonight so we can be productive as possible and hear as much from the public as possible. I'd like to start talking to Ilana Quirk, who's our town council. And this was put on the agenda for the board to talk, because we can't talk outside of an open session about what should go on this letter, if we want to add anything, if we wanted to edit it, make it stronger, and we need this time tonight to talk about it. And so we have town council here to start us off. We're going to ask for public comment, limited public comment at the end. If everybody can keep it brief. I know there's a lot of people here who want to speak tonight about it, but if you keep it to 2 or 3 minutes, just so we can hear from as many as possible. And but really, we put this on the agenda for the board to have an open discussion on this. So, Lana, could you give us start us off with one of my questions? Is the purview of the select board here? I'm feeling. I think we've all heard from the public that they want the select board to do more. And so I think it'll help to clarify what we can do, what we can't do. And what I don't want to do is to step in the statutory shoes of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I think understanding that process helps everyone.
Exactly. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Ilana Quirk, KP Law Town Council. You have before you the potential comments by the Board of Selectmen to the ZBA for the pending Surfside Commons 40B on South Shore Road. Obviously, this is a project that this board has paid a lot of attention to already. You put a lot of time and effort into the original comments that you gave to the project eligibility letter that was applied for by the developer. And so at this point, the public hearing is ongoing before the ZBA. The standard for the ZBA as it moves forward in the public hearing process is to review the application, take in all of the materials, look at everything very carefully, ask for all of the information that it has the ability to ask for, get peer review of it, and then apply the standard, which is to make a determination as to whether the housing need, which is presumed to outweigh any local concern because there's not a safe harbor available, but to determine whether there is indeed a local concern that nevertheless outweighs the need for housing because of a local concern, because there's a local concern that is so important, health, safety, welfare, and based upon the regulations that apply and that have been sought to be waived, whether there either should be a denial of the project or whether there are conditions, a set of conditions that should be imposed. And so as the ZBA moves forward in the public hearing process, one of the things that is extraordinarily helpful to it, and one of the things that is required to do under the process, is to give a copy of all of the materials to all of the various town agencies, including this board, so that you can take your expertise about the community and about this project and make comments. And certainly the basic comments that you likely would make would be based upon the comments that you made to the project eligibility letter. But of course, this evening, you're going to hear from the public and see what their specific comments are with regard to the project, and that will help you as well. I did receive a draft, a very preliminary draft at the end of last week prepared by staff for you. And I have looked at that, gave some comments back on Monday, and asked some questions. And I do want to thank Erica for immediately giving me back the information that I needed, which was the Weston and Sampson report from 2017. I got that, reviewed it. I have some more questions about that. I spoke to the director of planning this evening. I spoke to the fire chief this evening. And there is a call in to the sewer department as well, because there's some technical questions that need to be answered and injected into your draft comments. And I know that there may have been a press on the part of the board to try to get the comments finished for this evening to get them to the ZBA. However, I understand that the comment period has essentially been extended. The board won't meet again, the ZBA won't meet again until July the 24th. And so the comment period now, I believe, is July the 19th. which I understand will allow you to meet one more time before this evening. So I think that the board can feel comfortable this evening hearing from the public, and certainly I will take, copious notes, to try to assist with your comment letter. But again, please know that I have seen the preliminary draft and am working on that within that parameter with regard to some of the basic issues, sewer, fire issues, and other public safety issues, water issues, conservation issues. So certainly those are all within play, but of course, very important to hear from the public, to hear their concerns.
So on July 11th, that's when we can do some part of this again and finalize the letter. Is that correct?
That's the idea.
Okay. And we'll get some of those answers that you're in the process.
Exactly.
Can I, just a quick question before, to Alana. You were talking about local concern. What is the standard for local concern?
Well, the first thing that the board does, that the ZBA does, is to look at all of the local requirements, which are the local bylaws, regulations, and rules, and make a determination as to whether the project conforms to all of those requirements, and to see what waivers are necessary and whether the waivers requested should be granted or not, or whether it is so important for public safety reasons, either for the future occupants of the project or for the residents of the town overall, to not grant the waiver. And it's a very high standard. The burden of proof would be on the board to show, in the event of an appeal, if they said we deny or we want to impose a condition, and the applicant came back and said, well, that would render our project uneconomic, and there was a review and there was a determination that that would be the case. The standard for proving a local concern exists that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. That burden would be on the board. And so the question becomes, I think your question is, give an example of what a local concern would be that would outweigh the regional need for affordable housing.
That would meet the standard,
That would meet the standard.
That the state would accept.
Exactly. So some of the examples, and there are not that many of them, because obviously the presumption is that if you don't have a safe harbor, which one is not in place at this time, there's a heavy presumption that there is not a local concern that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. But certainly there have been a couple of cases. One, for instance, where there was a very long dead end, like more than a mile, and it was a very dense development, and ultimately it was determined that was just too long. In the event that you had blockages, fire issues, which of course are always of paramount importance, were a huge concern. And so that was found to justify denying a project. Other types of concerns relate to, in the event that there is some terrible public safety issue that you just can't get there. Now, I can give you an example in the reverse of what was found not to be a local concern that outweighed the regional need for affordable housing. There was a situation where the town was able to prove that, well, this project is going to flood, and as a result of the flooding, one of the roads in will be blocked during storms, and so public safety won't be able to get in that way. And the HAC looked at that and said, that's true, it won't, but there's another way in. It will take a lot longer to get there, but you'll be able to get there. So we find that that is not a local concern that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. So my recommendation always within this context is for the ZBA and for all the local agencies that comment on the project to look very carefully at health and safety concerns. Certainly the ability, and the fire chief has raised a number of issues, the ability to get in and to make sure that the models are satisfied, the turning models, to make sure that the heavy equipment in the event of an emergency can get in and can get around the various buildings. Those are very important concerns. And of course, parking is a concern with a heavy development like this. So, and the ZBA is certainly, very cognizant of those issues and is paying a lot of attention to those issues and has asked for peer review of all of those issues. But it is certainly extremely helpful and very important for this agency to make those comments and for the public to be heard with regard to those kinds of issues.
How often in similar type of projects are parking requirements waived? And how does the state generally look upon that?
I would say that the ratio of parking for the vast majority of the developments that I see, the ratio is going down, constantly going down, and that's being upheld. But it's in a different context than what I see here. This is different than what I normally see. What I normally see is a very large rental project within a certain context within a community where there's public transportation and I know that there is some public transportation that a bus line stop was added not too far, and it's apparently year round, so that is of some assistance. But still, this situation, given the seasonality and the other unusual and unique situations that you have here on Nantucket, need, I think, very specific peer review to make sure that this is safe for everyone. Obviously, there are a number of single-family homes that are proposed. I believe 60 of them, but I believe with only 2 parking spaces each, and some of them will have 4 and 5 or more bedrooms. And so, obviously, that's not something that I typically see. I do a lot of 40Bs, sometimes 3 a week, even 4 a week, but I can't say that I have ever seen one with 5 bedrooms, in a single family or more. And so obviously the parking issue is going to be very, of great importance. And the width of the access ways is going to be extremely important, because the concern, of course, is if there's on-street parking, what does that do? Particularly in the winter months when there's snow, to make sure that there's ability to get the snow removed, to have snow areas where the snow will be taken to, or that it will be removed in an appropriate fashion when necessary. Because of course, if you already have a narrow road and someone is parking, a number of people are parking along the road, whether they're guests and so forth, that really hampers the emergency responses. So that's something that the ZBA has been highlighting with the applicant and has asked peer review to highlight. But again, always an important thing for an agency such as this one and for the public to make those comments as well. I have not seen a situation where a direct challenge has been made only on the issue of parking. If it were simply parking, it would be difficult to deny a project. But here, certainly a condition that the roadway be of a certain width and so forth, those certainly would be conditions that the ZBA would be, within its purview to consider. And helpful for it to do so with, certainly with the urging and the advice of this board and of the comments from the public.
Ellen, I have one question. If you have seen a situation like this where environmental concerns have been significant enough to have an impact as a local concern, particularly because this is in a wellhead protection zone and a watershed.
The wellhead protection issue is a critical one, obviously, for this project, and it is beyond really the realm of the overall environmental picture, because there are state permits that would be required for that, and so of course those would have to be satisfied. But the wellhead issue is of great concern, and the ZBA has focused on that as well, and is looking for very specific peer review on that. Obviously, the impervious surface requirement is normally, I think it's 15%, but they're looking for over 50%, 48%, I think overall, and for the condo project, it's over 50%. So, a huge concern, obviously, and that is something that the ZBA is focusing very heavily on. But again, within your comments, very important for that to be focused on and to be presented to them.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one other, I guess, is we've delineated the island into town and country, and we're trying to put density around commercial nodes and not put density out in the countryside. We don't always follow that at town meeting, but that's sort of the goal. How strongly does the state view, if we look and say this is all car dependent trips, this is not near services, et cetera, do they look at that like new urban principles that they're pushing, or do they not look at that?
Yeah, I would say that you go back to the standard, and that the burden of proof is on the town to show that that's a local concern that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. With that heavy presumption there, I think that that's certainly a case that can be presented, but I would be concerned, particularly if it has been honored at times in the breach. Certainly if there were a master plan that had been, precisely followed, and there were specific aspects to it, that would be, one argument that you could make. But I think that the message that the state has given and that the courts have given in reviewing what the state has come up with in way of regulations and what the HAC does, is that the need for affordable housing is seen as so critical that they want to make sure that that burden stays heavily on the town to show that there is a really, an overwhelming reason to say no or to condition a project. And so that's why it's so important to have the factual aspects of all of the elements fully fleshed out, and so that everybody brings to bear, their education and their knowledge of all the different parts of the plan and the different parts of the town.
Any comments? Something that you want to see in the letter or edit?
There's one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit that's not in the letter, and that's I think that this would be somewhat unique to Nantucket, so maybe it hasn't been seen before. But I do know that the Cape does some limiting on this in terms of limiting the market rate pieces of this project in terms of summer rentals.
Oh, yes, the affordables, absolutely.
No, not the affordables.
Okay, because the affordables obviously would be, as part of the regulatory agreement, they will be restricted.
Those would be year-round.
And I have seen
Nantucket
restrictions,
residents.
particularly on rental projects. Here it's all ownership. I have seen and would not have a problem recommending a condition that if there is a rental of a unit of a market rate unit, that it would need to be on a yearly basis, as opposed to a weekly basis. Certainly, I've given that advice throughout the Cape, Wellfleet, Eastham, and I believe that has not been challenged.
Okay.
Is that something you'd like to explore to put into the letter?
I think it's something that the ZBA should consider because getting into a situation where there are many pieces of the property doing weekly turnovers creates a whole nother layer of traffic and activity.
Understood.
That was something that came up this morning at the Affordable Housing Trust, and that was one of the concerns, that the discussion about sort of the mid-income housing, that there's some sort of restrictions on those, whether it's the weekly rentals, the monthly rentals, or an income restriction on it. And the ability to do that without it being an actual covenant and controlling those market rate houses. So that was a major concern. I just want to say that, I think that this letter, the wording needs to, at least from my point of view, it needs to indicate how for or against we are on this project. I found the wording to be a little bit soft, and I personally want the ZBA to know that I am adamantly opposed to this as it is with the density. And I think that it's appallingly abusive to the land and to the community on the whole with this kind of density and to the neighborhood. So that's not the kind of wording to go into a letter, but that's the scale of my, of how much I dislike this project. And I think that 50% ground cover, impervious surface in a wellhead protection zone it should be illegal, because that's protecting our water quality, our drinking water, and our pond water. So I really think this, to me, none of this would be negotiable without some kind of decrease in density. So. And I do think I've had a long discussion. There's been a lot of discussion about 40Bs and changing them, and we've heard that they're not changing. So we have to work within the bounds. And I think we've seen how 40Bs can be used for good projects. And I think, to me, and I made this comment earlier at the Affordable Housing Trust, to me, this is a sledgehammer 40B, and I think it's totally inappropriate for this neighborhood. So that's what I'd like to see explained in the letter or translated into appropriate language.
And how do we, is that just you get direction to?
Yeah.
To town?
For me to tighten up the wording in a way that is more, it's not wishy-washy. It's not maybe if, it would be nice or should. I still think it wherever possible, it should be musts on some of these, some of the comments were shoulds and mostly shoulds. And I think it should be must wherever possible.
Is this one of those areas, I guess a question for us or Ilana, where we've really put our foot down on this, and could it be too far and the state throws it out because we use the wellhead to, just saying what Rita explained.
Well, when the ZBA looks at this, and makes a determination as to whether to deny, grant with conditions, it will look at the peer review results that it gets from the experts. And so in particular, on this issue, there would be a need and I'm sure a focus for the ZBA to look at the wellhead protection issue and what the expert peer review consultants come back and say, what is the harm? Because again, while that's an important interest, and I actually have one pending right now where there was a denial based upon protection of water quality issues. We'll see where that goes. But here, if there were a denial or if there were conditions saying, look, you're too close, it's too much impervious surface, the percentage of impervious surface is too high, it needs to be lowered, it would be better, obviously, and more defendable if that were based upon what the peer review consultant came back and said, here's what the harm is, and this is why you need to do this. And the recommendation is that 15% is certainly what you would want. Maybe 20% would be something that you could do, but 50% perhaps is not. And you would need the peer review consultant to assist with that. But certainly the message would be presumably from this board to the ZBA that you hope that they will focus on that and will look very carefully at that issue and express what great concern you have for that issue.
And one quick thing with Jim. Where in the process would it be, if it was going to be reduced from 152 homes or the ground cover, does that happen if it only gets denied, or could that happen from now until the end?
It's a great question, and the way that works is that there is almost a dance provided for under the rules. And the way that it works is that the developer comes in, makes the presentation, the board listens, has peer review, and then the board makes comments and says, look, this is what we want to see. And we've looked at your waivers and we have concerns about the setback waivers, whatever they might be. And so we really don't want to give these setback waivers. We really want to see this kind of separation, additional separation between these buildings that you're proposing in larger lots and so forth, and less impervious surface. And then the developer has the opportunity to come back and say, well, you've asked us for a menu of items, and you've asked us for 10 things. We can do 3 of them, the other 7 we can't and we won't. And those 7, we say, will render our project uneconomic. Once that happens, the music changes, and then the ZBA has the opportunity then to say, all right, you say that these conditions will render the project uneconomic. We, as a board, have the right to ask you to give us a pro forma to show us how these conditions would render your project uneconomic. And what that involves is an analysis by the developer to come back with the original pro forma that was given to the subsidizing agency that formed the basis of the project eligibility letter, and then a new pro forma that shows how the profitability of the project would change based upon these additional conditions. And then the board, the ZBA, when it gets that information, it then has the opportunity to have that peer reviewed by an economic consultant who is familiar with how these things are valued. And that consultant would look at the information and come back with a report saying, yes, this would render the project uneconomic, or no, it wouldn't. In the event that the answer is no, it wouldn't, then the ZBA has the opportunity to just impose all those conditions. Because if it doesn't render the project uneconomic, they can impose those conditions. If it does, then the ZBA goes back to that heavy burden to show that the conditions that it's trying to impose, let's say it's lowering of height, increasing the setbacks, whatever it might be, which in turn would reduce the density. They would say, well, we want to do this anyway because we think that there is a local concern here that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. That's how that would work.
Jim?
We've already written one letter to the state as part of that application process. I think a lot of what we've said will probably add to this letter. But it's still a letter. And while I don't want to in any way overstep the boundaries of the ZBA, I think the select boards, I think trying to struggle with what the role of the select board can be. And I'm wondering if there's something more we can do than just send a letter. I've heard board members raise the issue of impervious surfaces. of parking, of density. And I know there's a agenda item on here to do a traffic study. And we've talked about peer review, and I'm wondering if there's some other kind of model where right now I wouldn't be expert enough to give advice to the CBA on, what density might be better for impervious surfaces, whether it's 50% or something. But I think that's something that we should be able to, we might want to consider to be able to do. So maybe we get our own peer review. Maybe we, have some other folks to advise us on how to give some guidance to the ZBA. So I'm just struggling with how to do more than just, if anything, just sending a letter. So I put that out as a comment and something for us to discuss.
And yes, I have seen select boards in the past, if they have a particular issue of concern and they see the peer review report come back and they're dissatisfied with it, to go out and get their own peer review or just do it anyway before they even get the peer review
I'm
back.
talking about anyway. I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a lot, it's a big issue. I don't know if that's, but I'd like to have some idea about things like ground cover and whatever thing. I don't know. So just throw that out as an idea.
I think following on from that, and there are firms that do this. One of the things that really caught my eye about the waivers, where clearly my focus is on water quality, but the waiver for the determination of wetland boundaries, which I think would be an absolute mistake. But the waivers for trees, and I think as stormwater management being sort of one of the last pieces of the puzzle that we've been looking at in regards to water quality, I think there's a tendency to sort of downplay the need to make sure that we are managing stormwater properly. And there's a tangible value to put on trees and their impact their flood mitigation services. So when a site gets clear cut and then the trees don't get replaced, you increase the opportunities for flooding. And I think those are the kind of things that I would like to know if, specific to the context of this project, if that was a peer review of some sort, where's that balance between needing to make sure that we're not increasing flooding and clear cutting a site? So
And that, what you just said, may not be part of the peer review that the ZBA is doing. I don't know.
Right.
So, but if we are passionate about some element of that as a board, then maybe we get our own consultants to take a look at it.
Question on time frame. If we wanted to do more studies of our own, do we have enough time?
You have enough time at this point. Certainly it's 180 days from the date that the public hearing opens by the ZBA for the public hearing to be finished. However, the process often is extended beyond that time frame. But at this point, there still would be time remaining to go out and get those kind of reports and get them in.
Yeah, Jason. Yeah, just one thing that kind of struck me, I'm just thinking about it. You talked earlier about they typically don't see 5-bedroom market homes inside of a development like this. If the goal of this project is to improve the amount of affordable housing on Nantucket, then I would contend that this won't improve it, because the houses that are being built, the 75% that will be market, are going to require landscaping and cleaning and everything else. And those, the people that are going to need to do those jobs, I think it's 4 or 5 per dwelling, are going to get eaten up by the housing that are being provided. So we're actually getting behind. And I think that's a sort of a unique Nantucket factor that I think should be approached somehow. And I also think but it also gives us opportunities. I mean, I think that but from the harm point, I do think it really isn't going to help us if you look at some of the other, so look at Beach Plum. I have friends that are coming and they're renting for the summer, and they're going to they're going to an Airbnb in Beach Plum Village on one of the market units. So that, people are going to invest here, and this is where, it's going to be a nice subdivision. It'll be dense if it's built like it is, it's going to be really dense. But the houses are going to be nice in Airbnb. It's going to look great on, online. And so I think we're going to have more demand in there for certain dwellings than the state is used to. And so how do we address that sort of thing?
So long as they meet their 25% affordability, your hands in that respect are tied. And this is a complaint that I hear all the time, obviously, because if you have a 25% requirement, and you go and you build 100 units and you do 25 of them, 25% as affordable, well, the 100 units that you're creating creates a need for 10 new affordables. So you're only gaining 15. So it's really, a very slow progress. And that is as it is, unfortunately.
But I think because of the demand for the units that'll be built, I think we're going to be not even just 10. I think we might be equal or negative. I think we're going behind. If you actually did the analysis of what, in these, and I think it would be different than the rest of the state. The other thing, I do think there's an opportunity because the economics and how much some of the market rate can be sold for, I think there is an opportunity to get more tiers of affordability. And I think that these, I think rather than, so I look at it and say there could be more tiers of affordability, there could be less density, we could get rid of the, and this goes into the realm of we should be asked, should this board be asking, before I tell you what I think, should this board be asking for what we want to see? Is that appropriate?
It's certainly appropriate, and I can assure you that the ZBA is ahead of the game on that and has certainly said that to the developer already. The big concern that I usually hear, and I'm hearing on this project as well, is the need for affordability at 120% to anywhere between 120% and 150% of the area median income. It's just a huge concern. And so I know that in particular, the ZBA chair has been very pointed with the applicant about this issue and looking for a restriction. The developer has stated over and over again, I assume in very good faith, saying that there is a concern on the developer side for that and that they intend to meet that requirement. And then, of course, the chair, without any prompting from me, immediately said, well, but if it isn't restricted, even if you sell it to someone within, that ambit, within 120 to the 150% of AMI, if it's not restricted, it can be turned around and a windfall achieved, and then it's no longer serving that purpose. So I can assure you that the ZBA is very focused on that issue and doing what it can to speak with the applicant and to try to promote that concept. But again, including that in your letter and communicating that, I think is very appropriate. To ask that be considered and promoted. I think that's very important.
Any other comments or questions right now for Alana or for us?
Will we come back after we hear public comment? Okay.
I want to reiterate some of the points that are most important.
Okay, so I'd like to have some, there's anybody here to talk about this, about the letter, anything they'd like to see in it more or edit it? Can we come over to this microphone? That way if if there's any questions, staff can be at that microphone, if that's okay. Anybody here like to talk about this agenda item? Okay, anything with the board?
I'll say something. Okay. Edward Toole, the ZBA chairman. I just want to talk briefly about what Jim brought up about whether the Board of Selectmen wants to do more work in terms of giving the ZBA not more ammunition, but more information in terms of some of these technical items, because we're not experts either. We don't know anything about the wellhead recharge area. We need help with that kind of thing. We cannot commission, and we don't have the power to ask, well, we can ask you. And that's what we were going to do about the traffic study. So I encourage you, if you have an issue and it's technical and you want to help us out, have at it.
Good, thank you. Well, that's a progress, I think.
Thank you. State your name.
Hi, David Iverson. I live on South Shore Road. I just want to thank the board here for giving us the very serious review it needs, as well with Ed and the ZBA. I think most people truly appreciate that this is beyond anything we've ever seen built here. It's in a very already densely populated place with 40Bs. I mean, within 2 miles, I think almost every 40B on this island exists. And how fair is that? Talk a lot about health. Is it good for the health of the community? How about the health and the welfare of the people that live in that area? I mean, I think that really needs to be looked at beyond the traffic. The wellhead is, of course, a huge concern, but all of us that live in this Surfside area, all of a sudden, is just every 40B is being dumped there. And how fair is that to us as the residents, the quality of our life, and the welfare, our well-being? So I think that really is a very important thing that should be looked at. But even beyond that, in the bigger picture, there needs to be something done about the 40Bs in general with the 25% rule on this island. I feel strongly that it doesn't work. We don't have the space. And as everyone's noted, at the 25%, we're not gaining on our shy. We're not going to ever make it, yet we continue to destroy precious, fragile property around the island. And as the sewer district grows, more properties become at risk for this. So I really urge you guys to really take a closer look. And I think that most everyone on this island would really appreciate a much stronger letter from this board opposing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sue Ellen Delcourt. I live at 91 Hummock Pond Road, nowhere near the development, but I live on this island. I want to thank you all for your support of the community and backing the community to try and send a letter to the state with really strong language of why this is detrimental to our community here. My feeling is, and probably the bigger picture is, Nantucket's an island. It's unique in that fact. We have limited resources on this island, being water, sewer, trash removal. We're already redesigning the dump to sustain the added traffic situation there. And what kind of overdevelopment of the island will cause further problems there. Problems as far as food supply, electric supply. Did I say that? Read in the paper that they're bringing generators to the island in case of a cable failure. So we put on added demands of the electric company, the water. So I think that the board needs to send a strong message to the government. And I agree with Jim Kelly that something other than just a letter should and could be done. And I'm hoping that you'll take the time and the energy to send that message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Cabral, 8 South Shore Road. I just want to thank you all and thank the ZBA. We could go on forever with our concerns, but I didn't have much to say because I just feel like you're getting it. To hear Rita's comments, to hear all of you comment, it just feels like you get it. And we're really grateful for that. My big issue is safety. I say it all the time. We have one way out. South Shore is a dead-end road. So when all these people come out, instead of going, they could go to the right to the sewer treatment plant, but I think that most of them will take a left to the one stop sign that we have. And I invite everybody to come by and see what an extra over 300 cars are going to do. It's just not safe. If there's a fire or an accident, we're in big trouble. And I just am grateful for all of you. I worry about our wells. I'm right across the street from that. And we have the pond. I'm not against 40Bs. My family has benefited from them. I welcome Sachem's Path, Abrams Quarry, love it. But this one is just over the top. And thank you for all your time and effort.
Thank you.
Hello, Sean Cabral, 8 South Shore Road. Again, I'd like to say thank you. I'm very much. I mean, it is, it's obvious that some of you are really, opposed to this. I shouldn't say some of you. It seems like you're very opposed to this. So really, thank you very much. You did say that that some people were asking if you could do more, and the only, suggestion that we could say, or the only request that we could actually make as a community or as a group, is we've been actually talking about making a request to you to actually contact the state representative and have them contact other state representatives around the state to see if they've had any feedback about negative, about the 40B process in other towns. So just like all of us neighbors in the community got together and are fighting this 40B, together. I think that there may be other neighborhoods or other communities in Massachusetts. So maybe if you reached out to the state rep, just to see if there are any other cases around the state, that maybe we could all just try to go together to make a difference. So at least try to get some exemptions put in. Maybe we could have some other houses counted in our housing stock, or get some exemptions at least for Nantucket. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Is there any other comments on this letter? Anything you want
One more comment.
on the letter?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, on town council, and I don't mean to monopolize, but town council mentioned the Weston and Sampson report from 2016. Could you tell me what that is? Thank you.
Yeah, through the board. Yes, there was a 2017 Weston and Sampson report with regard to sewer capacity issues. And so sewer connections obviously are very important for this particular project. There's absolutely no room for Title V compliance, that's for sure. And so they are looking to connect to the sewer. And so when I saw the comments, the draft comments, they related to this report. So I asked for a copy of it, and I do have it, and I will make sure that it's integrated into the board's comments.
Anybody else have a comment? Please state your name.
Chuck Delcourt, 91 Hubbard Pond. A point, first of all, thank you to the Selectmen and the ZBA for all the attention this is getting. A point that Mr. Fee brought up and I don't know if it's something that can be developed on or not, but how many times, the state says, here's the model, here's the annual income, here's the cost of living, et cetera, et cetera. Well, how many times have we heard the news when they say price of gas is X amount national average and the highest price for gas is in Hawaii and it's $3.50 and we're $4.50 at our pump. I feel like our community is not really in the statistics, and maybe that's something we can exploit where we're a little more unique than other parts of the state and even other parts of the country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Georgia Raisman, Low Beach Road in Sconset, far away from this issue, from physically. In terms of, I don't know if these comments are supposed to be limited to this letter, and unfortunately, so it may be relevant, but I think it would be helpful to hear officially from the fire department rather than unofficially, as I think the Zoning Board of Appeals has heard about the public safety issue. I think whether access is really going to be a major issue would be important to me if I were living there. As somebody pointed out, this is a community that cannot rely on nearby communities for additional fire access. We can't call on people 20 miles away or 5 miles away to bring additional firemen in, and to be able to get them in there in the numbers that are required in the case of any kind of serious emergency, I think would be a really important issue. I think the wellhead in the aquifer, the sole source aquifer, is an irrevocably important issue and ought to be addressed maybe on the basis of some sort of scientific study, if possible. And then finally, I think generally it would be really helpful to have the town consider seriously lobbying on a state level for some kind of amendment to 40B as it applies to Nantucket. I don't think we should try to say we should be exempt, but I think it would be helpful if there could be some sort of amendment where either the time available to us to qualify for 25%, or whether it should be 25% or less, or whether we should be addressing the issue in a different way, whether we should be given credit for addressing it in a different way. I think all of those things should be taken up on the state level because of our unique situation, both for public safety issues and for the aquifer issues, for the issues of waste disposal and the other things that have been addressed tonight. I think all of those require some kind of lobbying on our part, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be successful. We and Martha's Vineyard occupy a unique geographical position, and that should be enough to start the discussion on the state level. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia.
Hello. Patrick Tave, 21 Okawa. I'd like to thank the board for listening to us. And I'd just like to say, Matt, I think you hit on something. I don't think the numbers work. If we keep building at this accelerated rate, and each 40B that comes along, 75% of the homes are market rate and 25% affordable, can the board run the numbers and see, do we have to build 5,000 more houses on Nantucket to hit the shy? It might just not work here at all. And what Nantucket does need is affordable housing. We don't need the 75% market rate along with it. So we are a unique place. You don't have the opportunity to drive to the next town. Nantucket is very unique, and Nantucket isn't affordable. And it's like we're trying to put lipstick on a pig. There has to be another way to do this, and I'm just wondering if it's time that the town seriously jumps into it, and we take it on ourselves and build affordable housing that assimilates into the island, and not build Walmarts in everybody's neighborhood. Thank you.
Don?
I just have to make a comment. We have worked incredibly hard for the entire 3 years that I've been on this board to do exactly that. We have a project approved next door here that creates all 64 units count towards our shy. And we would not be having this discussion right now because we would be in safe harbor if 3 neighbors did not appeal that. And just, we have put such a tremendous amount of effort to try and address this. And I need to make that somewhat clear to everybody that, nothing is going to be perfect in terms of a housing project. Those are apartment buildings. We spent a lot of time trying to design something and approve something that would work and would address this issue. And that is, it's all rental, so it all counts towards the shy, and there are varying degrees of affordability. I think it's 60% of it is affordable, or more, 80% of it is affordable.
So it bears repeating, we wouldn't have this item on the agenda tonight if 3 of your neighbors hadn't filed a claim against this project. And we would be at our shy list. We would have this, we would have we would have our safe harbor, and we'd be able to go home at a decent time tonight. So, maybe I'm a little sensitive because, Matt and Dawn as participants in this work group spent countless, David Worth and others spent countless hours developing this project. It's, I think it's a national model, and it's very frustrating and for us to be sitting here tonight when victory was so close at hand.
Rita?
I just wanted to also comment on what you said, Don, and some of the things that have come up tonight, because they've come up to me from all over the island. It's not just this neighborhood, that this is a community issue. It's not just because it's in my backyard or my neighborhood. I'm all for affordable housing. I don't like 40Bs. And I agree with almost all of those. I've had long conversations with Tucker. I would love to change the 40B. It's much more difficult than we'd like to think, and every town thinks they're unique. There's also 40Bs done well that can have positive impact. So what I really would encourage everyone who has cared about this project or any other project like this, the town, this board is making a lot of efforts. We are prioritizing affordable housing, but for everyone who stands up when it is in their neighborhood and says they care about affordable housing, please send us ideas. This has been the most overwhelming and discouraging topic that has come up, and it feels pretty lonely. There's not a lot of people really from the general public that are committed, not just in I support affordable housing, but taking action. So we need ideas, and it is a community issue, and we need to be a little more innovative and a little less site-specific in our thinking. We really need to try and crack this on a smaller scale so that we have 40Bs in affordable housing that is appropriate for the context of Nantucket. So,
Thank you. Well said.
Megan Perry. I live off of Hooper Farm. And I just want to thank you guys very much for all the work you are doing on that. I think the reason you see all of us here is, as the law states, the burden of proof is on us to say we don't want this. This is not going to work for Nantucket. And our quality of life far outweighs the need for this small amount of affordable housing that would be going in. And I think, I'm sorry that you guys are seeing us all frustrated, but I think we're all frustrated with it. And we're all trying to understand it, and we're all trying to support you guys. We understand it's been tough on you as well. And thank you guys for putting in those letters and continuing to ask the state to consider Nantucket to be a little bit different than the rest of the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is what we signed up for. So when you're frustrated, this is who you come to. Any other comments on the agenda item? Maybe we'll take one more, and then we'll talk if there's any other comments of the board. More on this agenda item.
Jacques Zemicki, Wara Lane. Thanks for hearing all our comments tonight. Really appreciate it. My comment, actually, I have two comments. One is that this really is an island-wide problem in the sense that it impacts our aquifer. Our sole source aquifer in Nantucket is unique from many other sole source aquifers. USGS did a study 30 years ago and came to the conclusion that it was very unique. The way water infiltrates, the way water doesn't evaporate, et cetera. And one of the takeaways from that original report done in the 70s was that any kind of pollution that happens on the surface of Nantucket actually will get into our water table way quicker than it will in many other places. The one thing that has saved Nantucket from actually having polluted sole source aquifer at this point, and there are places in Nantucket where there's nitrogen loading, that you can get nitrogen out of wells and stuff like that, but in general, the thing that has kept us from destroying our aquifer is the layer of hardening we have, which ends up binding up a lot of the chemicals we spill, the gasolines, and filters that out before it gets into our sole source aquifer. The way stormwater is managed is crucial to the health of our aquifer here. There are ways of filtering out oils in non-emulsified things that float on the surface out of the water. That you might hear someone talk about storm scepter systems or similar type systems that are actually in use in Nantucket. These systems need to be maintained very regularly. A lot of states regulate the way they're maintained. Nantucket has no regulations how they're maintained. We don't even have anybody on the island that can maintain them because it requires being able to pump the oil out with a small hose, and no one has a truck with a small hose. And the sediment that gets into these things has to be sent, if you could pump it out, it would have to be sent off island because our landfill wouldn't take it. So one of the questions that I would like to answer, and I think it's great that you guys are thinking about maybe hiring some outside experts, but it'd be really great to have somebody come in and look at our sole source aquifer and how these systems work or don't work in regards to sole source aquifers. I mean, the storm scepter system, and I don't really want to get too technical, but the storm scepter system really takes out oil, which is, you don't want oil and gas in your in your groundwater. But nowadays, turpentines, or what we call turpentines, are water soluble, so they just go right through the system. There are the government, the EPA found that there are 97 out of 127 chemicals of concern that are found in stormwater. And most of those chemicals are just going to bypass the systems that are currently in place. And it's a huge load with that impervious surface of 48% or 54% or whatever it is. That's a really huge load to be putting into an aquifer. And what happens is the aquifer is sort of a bubble, but you actually, the way you load it in a concentrated area is that you actually, it's like taking a hypodermic and injecting pollutants or whatever comes through that system into the aquifer at that point.
Chuck, if I can stop you there.
Yep.
I think what you're saying is we need stormwater management study.
Yes, we
on
do.
This.
Yep. And then actually just one other thing specifically on your letter, the snow. Snow should not be piled on where the drainage tiles for the wastewater. Because what happens is you've already punched a hole through the hardening and you put something, there's a pollutant source on top of that, and it just actually will go into the groundwater much quicker, as opposed to being hauled off site or plowed to the side of the road with sufficient area to dispose of it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or thoughts? Summarizing.
I have a question. I don't know if anybody has done this calculation yet. If there was a parking space provided for each bedroom in this project, how much would it decrease the density? Can we try and find out?
I certainly don't think that calculation has been done, but I do want to emphasize that the ZBA has asked for peer review of the parking to compare it to what the requirements are and to look at the overall demand, of course, as well. So a very important question.
So just to, so peer review of parking. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about parking on Nantucket. Planning board talks a lot about parking and new developments and things. I think there's some local expertise about that here, and there's an understanding of the uniqueness of Nantucket. So how does that get into the whole peer review process?
Yeah, certainly you're used to, within the zoning context, that the reason why these decisions are made locally is because the local officials are familiar with local conditions, and that's why this happens in the way that it does. But within the 40B context, where the burden of proof is so heavy and is on the town, there's really a need to document what it is that you're talking about to support. And so the board has heard evidence already with respect to the fact, the anecdotal evidence, that the nearby 40Bs have a parking issue. They came in and they had a certain level of parking, which probably will be commensurate with what's being asked for here, and now they have a parking problem. And so that is something that they can document, and that would be part of their knowledge that they can bring to bear on this.
So the peer review can be guided by local experts and data.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think on the note of transportation as well, it's important that, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate in our letter, just as a comment to some of the waivers that they have requested, is that we keep a focus on non-vehicular transportation within any development, because there's been a request to waive bike paths, lighting, and street lights, bike paths. And if we're going to be short on parking, or if there's all those kind of transportation issues, I think it's important that those kind of things shouldn't be waived, so that it's in keeping with our priority of non-vehicular transportation.
So is that a request that
Be added?
Yeah, be added that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that makes sense. If you're going to waive parking, you've got to give the alternatives, and you can't waive the alternatives.
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Erica?
I just realized one thing that we didn't add into the letter that we did discuss at the pre-construction meeting for this, and that was any potential improvements to South Shore Road. One thing that we in the town have noticed is that when special projects are approved either by planning or zoning, there tends to be some damage to the town's roadways during construction. Case in point, we just had to repave the area all around Cumberland Farms on Orange Street beyond what we thought was needed at the beginning, and that was never, I don't think, included in any planning board decision. And it's something that I know that the DPW director has been talking to planning a little bit about in terms of incorporating those types of things into future developments. But it might be something that we want to consider here as well, because during the course of this very long phased project, if it goes forward, it's going to be a lot of construction vehicles, heavy equipment, and the possibility of damage to our roadways probably pretty high.
Libby, do you have everything kind of summarize the direction of what we're asking or want to explore?
Well, I jotted down a bunch of notes, including add limitation on rental of market rate units, tighten up wording to indicate more musts, less shoulds, address impervious surfaces, no waivers for any transportation-related issue, this issue that Erica just mentioned, and I'm just kind of going through it a bit, and there's a few typos and things that need to be corrected, but we're obviously not done with this yet. So those were the main things that I got. Are there more?
So what's added to the letter, but there's also
The conversation about what additional resources or help we can give the ZBA, whether it's on stormwater, parking, impervious surfaces,
Wellhead protection.
wellhead protection.
I think they requested help on traffic, wasn't
They
it?
did, yeah.
That's our
That's just
next
right.
item.
Yeah.
But there's a list of others that,
Right.
and I think they asked for help. So how can we help them?
okay. Do you need more clarification on that, Libby, or is that
Well, the areas I jotted down were stormwater, parking, impervious surfaces. We're talking about traffic in a minute. I don't really know what other things they want help with that they aren't already doing peer reviews on.
I think we're talking about the board taking a role in getting peer review or giving them the resources to do it. And this is more than just putting something in a letter. It's at least what I'm trying to put forward.
if there's anything else that we don't have, then we can talk about it our next meeting or in between.
I think it'd be helpful maybe for town council to do some research on what other select boards have done when they have areas of special concern. I think we mentioned that, not now, but as informing the town manager when she comes back to us with suggestions.
And not to take up too much of the board's time, but I certainly have seen in the very recent past where a select board hired, a specific consultant to come in and talk about water quality issues. That was important and was
Okay, that sounds like a good
ultimately.
idea.
Yeah, but your wellhead protection
Yeah.
issue is a critical one here.
Yeah.
And so that might be something that the board wants to focus on.
So, should we do that? Yes.
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 I
Yes.
absolutely
Is that
agree.
a form of consultant or someone just coming just to speak?
No,
and educate
consultant.
us?
I mean,
In the case that I'm speaking of, there was a proactive reaching out by the select board to hire someone independent and to make a report.
Okay.
Yeah.
so
Peer
should we do that?
Absolutely.
So we should direct town administration to do that if that's something we want to do.
So,
Probably look into an option and a price and where we might be able to get the funding from.
That was going to be, I could see Libby going,
She's
where's
like,
the
where's the
money?
money coming from?
She had the where's the money face on.
So I'll just put this, as a motion that the board the town engage a consultant to do peer review on, water quality, impervious surfaces, wellhead protection, and ask the town manager to come back with a proposal, costs, to do so, and maybe get some help from town council on identifying sources.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Is there a second for discussion? Or just a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, the other comment, I think we all know Nantucket's special, but I've lobbied up in Boston a bit, and they don't really care. And so, you know, and if we're thinking we're going to change the 40B laws in time to impact this, that's not going to happen. You know, we can do that as a gesture. We can do that at town meeting in the future, but we have to live in reality. And the reality is that this issue is in front of us now, and we've got to find a way to deal with it the best way we can. If I'm wrong, Ilana, correct me. So that's sort of in general. And when I see something like this, I would like to be able to say, instead of just saying no to everything, I would like to be able to say what is acceptable, what do we want, what would be okay for the community here. And I've probably written to a number of you, and a number of you have probably been kind of upset with me. But what I would see as acceptable, I would say, and this is my own personal opinion, has nothing to do with the board, I would say no apartment buildings, make the density similar to Beach Plum or Sachem's. That would hopefully getting rid of the apartments would hopefully make the project more affordable. Therefore, the project could potentially give more tiers of affordability. And if we had something like that, I think we would turn, a lemon into lemonade. I think that what is being presented all of a sudden could be something that we may not love it, but we take care of it. Would still take care of the ecological problems. It would cut the density quite a bit, and it would give something we're proud of. It would also give an example to future people that want to come here and do 40Bs. It would give them an example, because our economics are such that there's a lot of money to be made. And these guys are limited to how much money they can keep. They can only keep 20%. So if they make more of that, they can give that back to the town in more affordable, permanently affordable units. And so I think that there is a win-win here if the community is willing to work with the developers, and more importantly, if the developers are willing to listen to the ZBA and work with the community. And I would hope that something like that something good comes out of this. But that might be, maybe I'm wishful thinking.
And Matt, there was a conversation we had today at the meeting, and just quickly to say that I agree absolutely. And I don't know, everyone says there's no way to change the 40B, but I am not willing to give up hope that we can come up with a stunning alternative that allows us to do it in a way that suits Nantucket. So I think it's worth the effort, worth the thought, and definitely worth the input and feedback from everyone.
Yeah, well, we can't do it. But if it works, if it works for the developer, if it works for them, they can do it,
Mm-hmm.
and they can give us something that would be better for Nantucket. So, I mean, that's my, dream is that, that would happen.
Well, yeah, if we could get to safe harbor, we can still have 40B, but have a different level of say in 40B.
Yeah.
I was just, I had pulled up the whole history of 40B. It's been on the books since 1969. And there was a vote actually brought up in 2010, which went to a Massachusetts state ballot vote, and it lost 58% to 42%. It's just interesting fact to keep the 40B. And it actually statewide, and that's why it's going to fall on somewhat deaf ears at the state level. It accounts for 80% of the affordable housing statewide. It's really been the most effective way to get any affordable housing in all of Massachusetts. This is not me being in favor of this in any way. It's just some reality about 40B and what happens. I think we could potentially try to get a higher amount of affordability on Nantucket by home rule petition. I would support that. I don't think it's not going to make any difference to something that's before us right now.
While you have that up, does it happen to say on there how much of the state, what percentage of the state has actually reached safe harbor?
Oh yeah, it's not a lot.
Does it say what it is? I'd love to know.
I'll find it.
Only because, if it's been a law since 1969 and let's say less than 20% of the state has actually made safe harbor, that's a long time to show that a law is not something that's a good law to have, something we should revisit. And I don't think we should throw in the towel and say we're not going to change it. Why can't we?
Well, it went up for a vote in 2010.
I know.
Someone could try again.
We could change it. And we could make it so it actually provides affordable housing in a good way for people. But if it's a small number of affordable housing, it's not really affordable. Think about what we're giving up.
What do you think there, Matt?
I don't want to disagree, but I think this is in front of us now, and it's going to be something's going to happen in the next couple years. You know, it might drag out a bit. I don't know exactly the timeline. I don't, if we were really serious about changing it, there would have to be a statewide vote and a home rule. The home rule's not going to get supported. Maybe we can try it, but we've been up there. I've seen it. We would have to do a statewide. We'd have to have a lot of money, and there'd have to be a lot of, we'd have to mobilize a lot of people full time to do that. Not that it isn't worth it, et cetera. But even if we did it, it would be a Pyrrhic victory because this would already be there. So we really, at this point, I think our effort should be to make this as acceptable as possible.
What do we do when the next 40B comes in? Because there's going to be another one.
So we win our appeal and we'll have safe harbor.
Safe harbor.
We need to do it ourselves to get to what's acceptable.
And I don't know if this is correct, but isn't there a new census coming out in 2020? Will that affect our percentage and what might put us in safe harbor?
It could go down because it's based on year-round units, not seasonal.
And we're really lucky it's year-round units. We're not lucky that our friends and neighbors are moving off, and so there are less of them. But we're lucky that it's going the other way in this issue alone. When you look at places like Aspen and Telluride, they look and they say they want to have 30% of their housing affordable. They don't say 30% of their year-round. They say 30% of their entire housing stock. And we are miles away from that. So
this is a very good discussion.
still
Let's get
trying to
away from
find
the
that
agenda
other
item. And one more comment, and we got to wrap this up and move on to the next
Thanks.
agenda.
Thank you very much for having this conversation. I just want to say a couple things. I had a few notes, and I do better without them. This issue is come up, this particular one, in the height of social media, and since the Six Tacoma, the Six Fairgrounds project that no one heard of, was, blown up, let's just say, and that was a planning board decision. Richmond, I just want to bring up a couple of things about Richmond. Somebody here said we need to do it ourselves. I think it was Pat said that. That's what we did with Richmond, okay? April of 2015, they came in with a very modest plan for developing that property, and it was blown up at town meeting. There isn't probably a person in the last year that's even remembers that. In November 9th, 2015, we passed an article that basically created the ability for us as a town to create its own housing like a 40B. I'm not saying Richmond's a 40B, but it's like our way of doing it without having the state. Since then, yes, there's been some issues with Richmond, but every one of them can be addressed by us, and they have. And this, right here, this conversation, you feel helpless, don't you? Because the state is in charge, not us. So be careful when we say no at town meeting, when we talk about zoning changes, especially in South Shore Road. We wouldn't even be here right now. 5 times we tried to change the zoning for this 14-acre parcel, might as well have been owned by Henry Coffin. Just driving by every day. Oh, this land in the sewer district. 14 acres of free dirt, by the way, because the people that owned it really didn't buy it the way we think today. Matt mentioned earlier, affordable on Nantucket. The affordable units are free. An affordable house on Nantucket, 800 grand. If there was 156 houses on Nantucket for $800,000, brand new, they'd be sold in a week. This is a weird place. The formula doesn't work. I totally agree. That's why zoning has been our answer for years. Okay? So everybody stop complaining about the zoning that planning and other citizens have tried to do. There's reasons behind it. We need to get educated and stop hollering at each other and being angry and making accusations about public officials on Facebook and other things because it's wrong. Okay? Thank you very much for everybody's time.
Don, do you want to go on that?
Oh, I just wanted to give that data that there's 351 communities in Massachusetts and 39 have met their 10%.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you say this?
39, there's 351 communities and 39 have met their 10%. And 101 have developed housing production plans.
That's a small percentage.
Do I have something wrong?
That's a little bit out of date, just.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm on Wikipedia.
I did add up, Megan, I think I gave this to you. There's 66 that have reached 10%. There's,
Oh, that's really out of date then.
so that's the change from whenever that Wikipedia article is, which I think is 2011.
I'm looking.
So like 18%, a little less than 20%, right?
So there's 66, right, that have reached the 10% or exceeded it. There's 17 at 9%, 20 at 8%. That's
Thank you.
according to, that's as of September 14th, 2017.
So that's
Okay, we gotta wrap this up.
18.5% have met it out of the whole state. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all for your comments.
I just can't help myself. I need to say one quick thing. I know we have a lot to do, but that we aren't going to solve this just increasing supply. There has to be guardrails on price. I feel that very strongly. And to think that we're going to solve this by just continually carving the island up into more pieces, that won't do it. I was also on a board that was afraid to put this through as a 40B and Richmond as a 40B because 40B was a bad word and people might not like the name 40B. If we had used them as 40Bs as soon as they were approved and before they were built, but they were accepted and not challenged by the neighbors, they would have counted. So both of those could have counted, but we did them in a different manner that didn't get them on the rolls quick enough. So there are options that we can do. So anyway.
Thank you, Matt. Well, thank everybody for coming tonight and all their hard work. One of the things that we kind of complain about as elected officials is the public doesn't get involved enough. Well, the public's involved in this one, and it's good. So I appreciate that. Thanks for coming out, all your emails. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to review of requests for a zoning board of appeals for independent traffic study in connection with Surfside Crossing for the application. I think after that hour and a half right there, I think we're all pretty for that. The board wants to
Oh, yes, motion to.
go forward with that. Anything you want to add, Libby?
We're just going to have to figure out a scope and who's going to manage this. So Andrew and I talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the meeting, and we were going to try to get some traffic counters out over the weekend and into next week that could at least begin getting data together. Why? Okay, now Mike is shaking his head. We're not doing that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We're going to need to get the review done somehow. It's going to have to happen quickly. So there's, we're going to have to rearrange resources to get this done.
Okay. So, you had a motion?
Yes, motion.
Second.
To move forward.
Aye.
The motion approves, is approved. Moving on to annual review of code of conduct, statement of commitment sign-offs for committee, board, commission members. This is something that we ask all committee members to read and understand and to sign. It's a code of conduct. or if you are elected or appointed. Is that up behind?
Yeah, and hopefully you all know that all the Alexas mean that somebody has signed their statement of commitment.
Okay. We just like to bring this up to,
Pretty good.
I think, 90% have signed. And if they haven't, is it
I mean, sometimes just
oversight?
Some elected officials have chosen very specifically not to sign. They feel that that you can't dictate what they should or should not do because they are elected. Also, you'll see some spaces where it's staff. Staff is not required to do that because they're not really participating. They're more liaisons. But I would say that our response has been really, really good about, people take it seriously. They want to conduct themselves in a manner that's befitting their positions here, and they try really hard.
I think it's more than just a piece of paper. I think it's an agreement, it's acknowledgement that we all get along and we can all disagree, but be professional. So I don't know if there's not something we can make a motion on. If you're saying if you're in an appointed position and you don't sign the code of conduct, you don't agree, then maybe it doesn't go through. We don't have a committee to do that. It doesn't even make sense. Yes.
I will note too that some people who are new applicants don't realize that they have to sign the statement of commitment. It goes out after they get appointed. It goes with their appointment letter. The majority of them send them in. I would say the high majority, the vast majority of them do. So it would be difficult to hold back appointments based on that unless you were reappointing and somebody still hadn't done it.
I think it's a good conversation to have because there's, in the world of kind of going back to what Nat mentioned earlier, in the world of social media, we all it's very easy to be a keyboard cowboy and to get angry at someone and be unprofessional when you're appointed or an elected official. Now, there's no enforcement, there's no rules. We can't come in and take away your position because you said something on Facebook or Instagram that was just inappropriate. But I would like to make sure our culture stays positive because I think when we can continue to have conversations and avoid name calling or calling out staff on social media, to me that's just 100% inappropriate. And it's happened a little bit this year. And so that's why we wanted to put this on the agenda to make sure people are signing it, but also to make sure we're all in agreement that's important to us as a board. Any comments or thoughts?
I agree. I agree 100%. I take it into consideration in my appointments. I look and see, who's doing it and who isn't. It's not the only factor, but it's one factor that's in there. And I think some of this is sort of the golden rule. Treat people the way you'd want to be treated. Don't write something that, and do something that you wouldn't want someone writing about you. If you have an issue with someone, take it up with them directly. I just think some of this is common sense, but it's lost in the age we're in now sometimes. So.
In the social media age, it's become an increasing issue where I think people say whatever they're thinking that they wouldn't necessarily say to someone if they were directly in front of them. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to think a little bit more about that in general, but particularly as people who represent the town.
And are meant to be working together positively, disagreeing as needed, but positively. And I think it really is having an impact on some of the committees.
To the comment about elected officials, I don't look upon this as something that I've been directed to do. It's something that I embrace doing, and it's my expectation that I would want to serve with other elected officials that felt the same way.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, board members. Okay, we're on to 2018 Annual Committee Board Commission Appointments. All right. So, looking over this morning, we have 17 committee commissions that have for example, have 2 openings and 2 applicants, or have no applicants. And then we have 5, airport, Board of Health, Finance, Planning Board, Alternatives, and the Government Study that we have to take a vote on. So would the board like to do a blanket vote on the 17, and I can list those out, that are unopposed?
I'll make a motion that where we have applicants that meet the vacancies, that those folks be appointed with thanks.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And just really quick, that's the Agricultural, Capital Committee, Cemetery, Conservation Commission, Contract Review Committee, Council for Human Services, Council on Aging. I can't read my writing. Culture Council.
Yep.
HEC Associate, Mosquito Control, Affordable Housing Trust, Real Estate Associate Committee, Roads Right of Way, Scholarship, Tree Advisory, ZBA and ZBA.
Do you want to make a note about
Yeah.
tree advisory? 'Cause
Yeah,
there
so-
is no applicant.
So no applicants for tree advisory. That has been, it's kind of getting a defunct advisory committee. Haven't met in years. There's no minutes. And they have to have a quorum to meet, and there's not enough people who are on it to have a quorum. So I don't know what's the best steps. If we just want to just get rid of it, is that the best thing? Yeah. I mean, there hasn't been minutes or a meeting in for years.
Do we have to put that as a separate agenda item to,
Well, I mean, it's not on the agenda tonight, so yeah,
right,
probably.
yeah, we should. So let's put it on agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so now we're going to do Airport, Board of Health, Finance, Planning, Board Alternative, and Government Study. So Eric is going to help me if I mess any of this up. So Airport, we had 2 seats available for applicants. The applicants are Peter Schaefer, Daniel Drake, Andrea Planzer, and Christopher Wininski. And we have 2 seats for applicants. So we'll write 2 names down and hand them over to me. Okay, Jason voted for Dan Drake and Andrew Planzer. Jim, Drake and Planzer. Rita, Drake and Planzer. Don, Drake and Planzer. And I believe that's you, Matt, Drake and Planzer. There's 2 are in.
And I had a really hard time because the other 2 candidates there were really good,
Yeah, no,
And-
they were.
which is not always the case. And, you know, I wrote one and crossed it out, but
I agree and encourage both of them to apply again.
For Board of Health, we have 1 seat and 2 applicants. Our applicants are James Cooper and Howard Dickler. Okay, I voted for Mr. Dickler. We have Matt for Dickler. We have Don for, I'm sorry, Cooper? Yeah, Cooper. Rita for Cooper and Jim for Cooper. So Mr. Cooper is on the Board of Health.
And that was another hard one.
yeah, that was a difficult one.
Okay, on to Finance Committee. Speaking of hard ones. Let me get my-
Oh, here's my list.
We have 3 seats available, 5 applicants. The applicants are Chris Golacki, Peter McEachran, David Worth, Peter Schaefer, and Nancy Wheatley. So we have to pick 3 of those. Okay, Dawn, we have Worth, Boacky, McEachran. Jason, Worth, Wheatley, McEachran. Rita, Boacky, McEachran, Worth. Jim, McEachran, Worth, Schaefer. And Matt, Worth, Schaefer, McEachran. I did not.
There's a tie, right?
Two and one. So you, sorry, Mr. McEachran and Mr. Worth were both voted in unanimously, and then you have a tie between Mr. Glowacki and Mr. Schaefer with two of each for each. A tie with Glowacki and Schaefer. So you're going to have to vote again between those two.
Okay. You just write your names on it in case there's any questions that Eric has. I've been writing yours on it for you now.
Oh, you can't tell from my terrible writing?
If you're the only one that doesn't write the names on them. Okay, Jason is Schaefer, Rita Glowacki.
Hold on.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
Schaefer, Rita is Glowacki.
Yep. Jim Schaefer, Don Glowacki, Matt Schaefer.
So it's Mr. Schaefer.
On the Finance Committee. Okay, Planning Board Alternative. Let me see. Okay, we have 2 seats and 4 applicants. One is a 3-year term, one is a 1-year term. How does the board want to do this? Do you just want to do the 3-year term and one separate or separate vote? What's the easiest way to do this?
I think we should do the 3-year first
First,
and
okay.
do the 1 year.
So 3-year first.
I would just do, I thought it was based on the number of votes they get. First gets 3 years, second gets.
You guys can do it any way you want.
It's up to us.
I just rather vote for 2, see how it all shakes out, rather than individual.
How do we decide then after we all vote? Just whoever
top
gets 5
vote
votes,
gets-
4 votes?
Yeah, top vote gets 3. Or,
And if it doesn't sort itself out, then we talk about it and do it.
If it's unanimous?
There you go.
Top vote. That makes sense to you, Eric?
So you're just voting for 2.
Yes, and top vote will get the 3-year seat. I'm sorry, the 4 applicants, Ladar Zola and Williams, Campbell Sutton, and Sean Cabral. For those listening on radio at home.
Doesn't matter. Why am I folding it? I don't want you to know.
Okay, Jason Zola and Williams, Matt Zola and Cabral, Don Zola and Williams. Oh, sorry. You're right on these down.
Matt and then who?
Don was Zola and Williams. Jim is Zola and Sutton. And Rita was Zola and Sutton.
So there's a tie.
So you have another tie. Miss Zola was the highest with 5, so she would get the 2021 seat. And then you have a tie between Williams and Sutton.
So we're voting between Williams and Sutton.
Correct.
Okay.
For the 1 year. Okay, Matt Sutton. Jason Williams, Don Williams, Sutton, Jim Sutton, and Rita Sutton.
Sutton.
So Sutton gets it 3 votes. Okay, on the last one, Government Study Committee. For some reason, I lost in all my papers. I believe it's Catherine.
1 seat,
Oh, there
2
it is.
applicants, Catherine Stover and Curtis Barnes.
Stover and
Curtis Barnes.
Curtis Barnes.
Oh, the one without the name is me again, sorry.
That's the no name.
I'm learning here.
I'm a slow learner.
Okay, Jim Barnes, Rita Barnes, Don Barnes, Jason Barnes, and Matt Barnes.
That's all of them.
I believe that's it for votes. Agenda. Okay, we're going to move committee reports to the end of the meeting. Now we're on to consent items. We have 6 of these. Number 4 and number 6 have been tabled. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 5. Is there any, do we want to do a blanket vote on these? Do we go by one? It's the pleasure of the board.
I'd make
Consent.
a
The whole
motion.
agenda, unless there are questions.
Sometimes there's a question every once in a while.
I'd make a motion to approve all 5, or
Second.
all
Oh, 3.
All four.
4.
3, 4, 2.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that aye, Matt? Yeah. All those, so it's unanimous. Okay, we're on to citizen department request for the assessor request for endorsement of the abatement advisory committee appointment. I have that in front of me.
I move approval.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Okay, the next one is the planning office request for execution of purchase and sale agreement, temporary license agreement to allow construction on Dartmouth Lane. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have the map? Sorry.
Let me find it. Okay.
So the board had, this is a paper street called Dartmouth Lane, which goes between Derrymore and Delaney. And this particular section is the northern side of a parcel that we've already dealt with. You can see it outlined in the yellow, or the highlighted section there. It would go to the adjacent owner to the north. That owner has received permission to divide that property without the inclusion of that particular paper street. This allows, this matter is stuck in land court like so many of the other ones. And this allows him to do some initial work on that property, and basically the purchase and sale allows him to seek the direct approval from land court, I'm sorry, which actually takes a burden away from Vicky here from calling them all the time and figuring it out. The long-term plan for that road, as you can see, is neighbors did not want that to become a through road. So I would ask the board to move ahead and
How is it less of a burden if you do it now? Is it rolled up in the land court, or what do you mean by that?
the burden is seeking the land court approval. The license expires once we actually do the transfer. And what is, again, there's sort of not a distinct set of rules, like it goes to the land court and 30 days goes by and then something is approved. It's taking a long time to process all of these. Am I overstating it, Vicky, or understating it?
So in the instances of most of these yard sales that end up in land court, what's happened is they're registered land. We file a plan that's on the recorded land side. So we then have to create a parcel on the registered land side in order for it to be actually allows us to have a certificate of title put into the town's name. And then we could then go ahead and sell the property to the property owner. Because of the process, we end up having to have these plans created, file them with the land court. Then it sits there. It sits there for literally, it can sit there for several months. And then we file petitions to have a certificate put into the name of the town. This process has taken several years on some people's part for us to be able to get this through. So this enables this property owner to be able to, actually put in some utilities in what would be Dartmouth Lane, and then proceed to do his subdivision of his property while we're waiting for the land court approval, which again could take another year, for all I know. So, this will enable him to go ahead and proceed with the subdivision.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Vicky or Andrew, that he's required to put the utilities in this area of
I think
land?
that was part of the subdivision plan approval, was to put the utilities in there. So he's going to be, the town is going to be granting him a license to be able to install these utilities. He can't put any other structures in there. He can only put the utility lines that are shown similar to the plan.
I make a motion that we approve the request.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to public hearings. We have A through E. I believe we're going to open up a public hearing for each one individually.
No, I think we could do it
Okay, so we're going to open a public hearing as a group.
for the group. So we're asking you to move forward on parcels C, D, and E. So parcel A, we're going to withdraw that completely. Parcel B, we need to continue that, and we would suggest to your September meeting. And then we're ready to move forward on parcels C, D, and E if you would vote to approve those takings. Just briefly, this is clearing the title to land that's in the name of the town. So it's in the name, but not actually because of some prior mistakes that were made. Again, this is land court property, so again, we have some corrective actions to do. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
So we're taking and not disposing at this time. It's, I move approval.
Anybody from the public?
I'm sorry, it's open.
Can you, so when you do a motion, just make sure it says you're going to have to do a motion to continue.
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone here in the public like to speak on these?
All right, which one is it?
Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
Well, don't we want to continue?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Do we want to continue the item B until the September board meeting?
Can you do that before we?
Yeah, make a motion to do that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes.
And I make a motion to approve items C, D, and E.
Second. Oh,
Sorry?
Did you close the public hearing?
I did close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then B is tabled. Correct.
B is continued.
Continue. Okay, town manager's report.
All right, we've got reviewing the potential warrant articles for the October 10th special town meeting. There's a note in the packet on this.
Okay, guys are both right. They'll catch up. Carry on.
They'll catch up. All right.
They can watch the tape.
Yeah, maybe we can get it done before they get back. We've got, as we know, the reason we called the special in the first place was primarily for marijuana zoning and/or general bylaw amendments. There's a memo attached from town council that sort of outlines the various options that the board might want to consider. And they include ban, limitation, zoning changes. I think planning board is working on some zoning bylaw recommendations and some general bylaw recommendations potentially. We're also looking at some other bylaws in the town code that may or may not impact some of us. So at some point, we're going to need direction from the board on what articles should be developed. Planning board is going to be talking about that on July 9th at its meeting, and we will have town council here at our meeting on July 11th. If the board wanted to have any discussion tonight, I know it's getting late and all, but it would be a little helpful to have some direction on what articles we want to start developing. We also have a number of financial articles. We have the infrastructure improvements connected to Old South Road and the infrastructure improvements connected to Milestone Road. And as you recall, we split that into two, as I just mentioned, from the annual, at which it was one article for Old South Road improvements, passed at town meeting, failed at the ballot. So you recently voted to split that into two, as shown. Some other financial articles have come up. I don't think any of them are overly controversial. We are likely to need supplemental funds for the C Street Pump Station renovation project. That's, I think, weather-related in general. And there would, I think, be sewer retained earnings to potentially cover that, as well as maybe some expansion of SRF funding. We'd like to put in design and engineering for a new sewer force main from C Street to Surfside. We talked about this over the course of the winter and the sewer break. We have a couple of airport projects, a project reappropriation and a grant-funded project that's come up since we were talking about a special town meeting. And we have a couple of potential fiscal 19 budget amendments. One may or may not have to do with the school, which could potentially be covered by a likely Chapter 70 state aid increase. And the other may be general fund and enterprise fund debt service budget amendments. And more to follow on that. Those are still being discussed. We're likely to need ballot questions. Don't know yet about marijuana, depending on the direction of the board. But the Old South and Milestone projects would be debt exclusions. And depending on, we've discussed this before, depending on what you want to do, those could potentially go on the November ballot, but we need to know that before August 1st because we have to notify the Secretary of State's office by August 1st. So that's pretty much where we are. The citizen articles, if any, are due this Friday at 4.
When did the warrant open? For citizen articles tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow technically, but really citizens can submit them almost any time. We're hoping that they would adhere to the deadline of Friday at 4 to submit.
And if something comes in on Monday, is it? It's not.
I thought we had a pretty hard deadline.
It's a hard
It is a
deadline.
hard deadline.
Yeah, okay.
But that would be at our pleasure if we wanted to.
Correct.
Have we ever done that?
Yes.
4 p.m. on Friday.
Or have we ever extended it?
We haven't extended the deadline, but we have put in articles later of our own citizen articles of our own volition later.
That
Yes.
you've decided to,
That we
They
supported
become select board articles.
or you might have put them in for them. I mean, we'd have to,
as a courtesy for another department. We've done that before.
not regularly. Any questions?
Thoughts, comments?
Yeah.
Just a comment on the, because I don't remember talking about it, but the design engineering for the new sewer force main.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's a good idea to do it now while the memory of the storm and the issue is fresh in everyone's mind.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, thank you. Good.
On the marijuana stuff, I think there's a lot of good suggestions in here. You know, public consumption bylaws and other issues in here. You know, I would hope that, are we going to get a recommendation or from staff, or are we going to be picking and choosing, and what's the process for doing that?
You're going to get recommendations from planning. Town administration isn't planning to give you any particular recommendation. I think some of this, like the ban or the limitation, those are really policy issues that you ought to think about. And you had different groups in here talking about it over the past month or so. I don't know if planning is leaning towards anything in particular. I think the limitation issue is going to be with you all specifically, and the zoning, as far as expanding zoning or retracting zoning or whatever, that's probably going to come in the form of a recommendation from planning.
and we're going to have this discussion when?
July 11th.
July 11th. We'll have, I think I heard you say town council.
And yeah,
Mr. Chairman, through you. So just to let you know, I mean, and Erica was present at the meeting. Thank you for your input as well. I think it's fair to say that the planning board feels, wants to follow the direction from you all. I think if you're recommending the 2 retail, I think that the board feels that's appropriate. I think the board is not willing to entertain additional locations at this time outside of the CN and the CI district for at least retail. I think there's a discussion about the craft cooperatives and some of the separating some of the ability to grow the marijuana by smaller entities. That is at least going to come up for discussion. And we're working with Katie at Town Council to give us some advice, as well as reviewing local bylaws that have passed in other towns. So we don't have a draft bylaw yet, but Planning Board will be discussing it in detail on the 9th. If you all want to send in group comments or you want to attend that, that would be great.
Yeah, it kind of kept coming up, the discussion about whether the zoning should be any different for the cultivation.
Right, and I will say that the board did have a discussion about, I don't think there is really support for that located downtown in the commercial downtown district. I've heard some comments on that, and I don't think there's support at the board level for that. Again, if you all have different opinions, I'd love to hear that.
Not for downtown.
I think, are you talking about cultivation as opposed to retail?
Retail.
Yeah, and I think Dawn was talking about
I was talking about cultivation.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, there's just been some questioning of, could the zoning be different for the cultivation only for growing?
Yes, and it could also have things like limits, like only X number of special permits could be issued, or, so
There's also size, like there's tiers that the state puts on in terms of volume that you're allowed to grow.
and it's less than 5,000, which is about it gets very technical, so.
One of my concerns, the more public forums that I go to, more articles I read, the Cannabis Control Commission Chairman Steve Hoffman, listening to him, who knows, but what if the feds open this up and then anything can come over in 4 years, 3 years, 6 years? How do we keep this local? How do we keep the jobs here? How do we keep it grown here? And where it's not, I don't even know if we can stop this, but the big money and the big tobacco, you've always said, Matt, how can we hold it off as long as possible? If, is there ways to do that with zoning to allow them to be successful?
I'm not sure there is, because we give it to someone and they're a local, or they're a nice group and we really like them, and they get an offer they can't refuse from a big conglomerate. We're done. We can't stop it. And I think that's the reality of what's going on. There's tons of this happening, and there's a consolidation, but it's not going the way that sort of the advocates envisioned. This is
just trying to do that.
Well, Mass is trying to do it, but they say they are, but then their zoning went to all the rich white guys, and they locked up the locations, and they put in Boston, they put a radius around it, and so the guys with the money all got it. So it really, there's the intention, and then there's the reality, and I think, so I think we have to realize we're not going to, there are hedge funds, and there's big money going into this right now. This is the next big thing, and it's it's going to steamroll across the country. I think you're absolutely right about that.
A question I would have, and I don't know if, Andrew, you know the answer, if you, Jason, if it came up at the meetings, Don, that you went to, is that my only question about that is if at the state level or when we issue a license, there is this local preference. And if they then were to if the business got bought out in 5 years' time, is it still a condition of the license renewing that there'd have to be some local presence? Like, I'm just not sure how, if there's that local preference restriction tied to the license and the license renewal, if they could get bought out the same way.
It's my understanding that we don't have any control in the host, the host agreement, the HCA. So are you saying that
my understanding is that the Cannabis Control Commission has local, you have to be a Massachusetts resident for 12 months in order to get the license, to apply for the license in the first place. So your concerns about them getting bought out in 5 years' time, is that relevant if that still exists? Like, can you renew the license? If they get bought out, do you renew the license? Even though
I think we would have control in the host community
That's
agreement.
it,
That's where we
really?
could say, you know what, we don't feel comfortable.
But you'd have you'd be up against someone with a lot of money and a lot of lawyers, and they'd start talking interstate commerce and rights and other things, and we'd have a very difficult time, I think, saying, we don't like you, but we like them. I just, I think I don't think that we should assume that we're going to be able to control who owns it for very long. I think we're gonna, it's sort of like, a market rate house, they decide to sell, they sell to whoever they sell to.
But if they
So-
sell, can we still make sure that it's grown here and jobs are here? And I don't think, maybe that's disadvantage.
I don't know. That's why I would love to see it not allowed to go back and forth on the boat, but.
This is only if
Yeah.
the feds change the.
But, Andrew, can we, he might be able to answer whether we can say you can't bring it from elsewhere in the bylaw.
Yeah, there is some, I'm thinking of what Katie had produced for us, and I know that there is a way to put something about local businesses, so we'll look at that. I know the craft, I mean the cooperative, it's important to understand, they have to sell to a retailer. They can't sell directly to the public. So that's one of the important things there. So, but I think once you have the bylaw, and we will definitely look at that issue.
Is there anything that you guys are looking at, for example, having the cultivation or product manufacturing in C-Tech or another area?
I think there was, at least from the initial discussion by the board, there was a little bit of resistance to that, that it's moving too much of it maybe into areas that are residential. C-Tech is an area that allows single family and commercial. Again, it's not final at this point. I think there was some pretty much agreement that it should not share the same space as residential space. And that is a recommendation, I think, but from the fire chiefs that those not be co-located together. And I think that makes sense. The argument that I found interesting, and I met with a local person today about growing outside versus inside, was interesting about the energy use, that the inside growers use a lot of energy, and those might tend to be more the national companies as opposed to local growers, which is an interesting idea. So,
Was there a clarification of whether inside was, say, in a container versus in a greenhouse? Is a greenhouse considered inside? I guess it is.
well, I guess a greenhouse would be sort of the agricultural subset, where the facility itself, which has to be air conditioned and heated and all that.
Okay.
So yes, the greenhouse is sort of the agricultural, localized kind of effort.
You've been interested in the co-op.
Well, based on the questions that I've been asked, it seems like there is a lot of interest in the co-op or sort of the collective, and it seems like there are a lot of small growers that don't necessarily want to have the burden of the actual business themselves, but
Testing
just small growers, yeah. As well as being approached about the possibility of extending it into the agricultural zoning. So, I had one question, just limiting the number of other types of adult use marijuana establishments, i.e. cultivation, product manufacturing. Would we have to specify each one individually?
You could, that's one of the possibilities that could be included.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a requirement, but it could be, we could start out slow and then that can be adjusted. I mean, basically, it can be adjusted either way, basically. But, right?
I'd like us to consider putting something in, even though the state hasn't put up the parameters for home delivery yet, within our bylaw. I mean, I kind of think we should start by prohibiting it, and go from there once we see what the state approves. But
Right, and the same
I'm
applies to
concerned
social.
about how that's going to function here.
Social consumption is the other one that again, rules have not been developed yet. And from the examples I've seen, most communities do add it in, but it's just listed as prohibited for now. So,
So
again,
I think we should preemptively do that, and depending on what the state's time frame is. It could catch us like right in the middle of when we would be having a town meeting.
Right.
It just might not line up very well to address it.
No, I agree 100%.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yep, and I do, and I know I'm probably the only one, but maybe I'm not. But I know that there is a bit of a groundswell that I think no matter what we do, we should go very slow, and it's easier to let the reins out than try to pull them back. And, and we may want to have an option to ban it. I think that there's a groundswell of people who now realize what this is about. And I don't think it's it was a feel-good vote without people understanding what the implications are. I think more people, the more they look into it, I think there's a little more concern for here. I mean, so, and I'm not sure what we do, how we place that, if we even did it. I'm not sure it would get 3 votes to be put on the ballot from this board, but I think that we at least should discuss it and where to put it.
So you guys know where I stand. I haven't really been really vocal. I've really tried to have an open mind and listen for this last year and 4 months and been looking at it. I'm for limiting it to 2. I don't want to ban it because I don't think it'll pass. And then it's wild, wild west. That's what makes me nervous. And then I don't like 1 for the kind of monopoly side of it. I think they're going to have to work together to be successful. These 2 businesses growing, and I think 1 wouldn't have a monopoly. And I don't think all the people I've talked to in the industry, you would have 2 successful, and the third one would just keep coming. If we limited it to 3, the third one wouldn't be successful. So I right now taking the position of I want to limit it to 2. That's where I'm at right now. If we can get clarification, because Steve Hoffman, the CCC guy, made me question about the 20% that it would have to go to a ballot for 2. When our town council said only 0 or 1 would have to go to a ballot because we're rounding up. So the way he said it made me, I wasn't so sure. So if I could just maybe get another layer of clarification that if we limit it to 2, it wouldn't have to go to a ballot.
I thought it just went to town meeting.
I think it's just a general bylaw, right? And then all the zoning bylaw. Okay. If it's not a ballot, then I'm for 2.
I think there's, this is still it's social policy, it's health policy. And I think it's okay to consider taking the temperature of the community about things like this from time to time. I'm less concerned about the financial success of these organizations personally. I don't feel a need to link that number to what might be financially viable. I'm personally more interested in restricting access. And you've heard me share my concerns about it. I'm very much in tune with what the school superintendent said. So I think we should have a conversation about Matt's idea.
Of what? Ban?
I was saying we may want to consider giving the public the opportunity to do that. And I agree with you that it might blow up, but that
blows up, then it's the opposite.
No, if it blows up, then we go to step 2, which is we do what you're talking about. In the town meeting, we don't have to have only 1 article. You can have more than 1 article.
It's a ballot initiative, isn't that? Is that complicated? It would have to be on next annual town meeting.
It would be.
Fail at the ballot. Right.
If you were talking about a ban, you'd need a special election following the special town meeting. Can't go on the November ballot. And if the ban failed, then there's no ban. What I'm not totally sure about is how you'd logistically have a backup plan.
But what I'm saying, what if you had 2 articles and you had a ban and you also had
A limitation.
a limitation of 2 or 1 or 2, and they both pass town meeting, and you go to the ballot because if we vote at town meeting, the 1 or 2 is the law once we vote it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then so we go to do the ban, and the ban doesn't pass. We still have the law we just voted, correct?
I'm just trying to frame the conversation for the 11th. I think it's important to have town council here to answer the what ifs and the procedures and that kind of stuff. But
I know we're not taking a vote tonight.
Yeah.
I know, we're not, but I'm asking that question because
right.
because we're going to want to have clarity on that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not suggesting an all or nothing situation.
Right.
But I'm also, I'm cognizant of, of friends who have had, children who have been very severely impacted by this. I'm cognizant of what's happening in other areas with sort of health issues. And, I'm cognizant of our, party atmosphere that we're fostering. And so I just think there's a combination of things that people, that a good number of people feel strongly about,
Party atmosphere is something I think is a serious consideration.
And this all started as medical marijuana. This was going to be, wasn't recreational. This is really going to help people. And we have all kinds of studies that have showed it. But Monday, for the first time, the FDA approved a medication, CBD-based medication that's proven to be shown efficacious for medical treatment, epilepsy in this case. It doesn't get you high. It has, so whether, and that's the only one there's been. Now it still has to go, the DEA has to figure out what does this mean, because marijuana is still a class 1 substance, whatever, along with LSD and heroin. So that debate will ensue. But I think that's just an interesting fact that ties in with some of our conversation about medical marijuana.
Our first letter of non-opposition was to a medical-only establishment, which our second letter was to a medical-only establishment that now wants to be recreational. The first one's grandfathered. So, so this, that's what's going to happen no matter who it is. The money, and when you look at the setup of these operations, there's a small space for the medical and there's a big counter for everything else. And that's where the money's going to be made. So, and fair enough, they're in business and fair enough. But, I feel as though it's been a little bit of a, we've been a little bit of a bait and switch. We're here to do medical. We really want to help you. But, so.
That's why I want to get ahead of the social consumption
Oh,
and
100%.
the home delivery before, so that we can take our time on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think our big questions are, do we propose a ban, which I've been against because the community voted for this, but I still have some questions on, did people just want to grow their own or did they really want to shop? But it did hit home with me what the superintendent had to say. It'll become more normal, just like people have bottles of wine and beer in their fridge that their teenagers might go and take when they're out. It can spiral into things where it becomes so normal that kids have more access to it. And there are a lot of studies of how detrimental it is to anybody who's under like the age of 25 in terms of their development.
Especially us guys, because we develop slower, so it can really mess us up.
I think the cutoff is 50 for men. So.
Any other comments on marijuana?
Yeah, just to chime in, I'd be very hesitant to vote to put a ban on. I haven't heard the groundswell of opposition for a straight out ban. I've definitely heard some of the fears about the what ifs, and I think going slowly is important and maintaining the controls that we set good policy. But I think without further feedback or evidence of the community really wanting to consider the ban, I feel like it would be a bait and switch, because for me, part of the moratorium was to look at how we would set the zoning and how it would create the policy, not to then throw out the possibility of a ban. So without that, I wouldn't be in favor of it at this stage, but I do understand the concerns.
I'm more supportive of the idea of a limitation, so that there aren't like 5 trying to open at once. I think it would be just too overwhelming for the community.
And to clarify, I would be very supportive of a limitation. And I thought, Jason, your point was reasonable. And I think it would be, again, I think the community to me seems reasonable, and they also seem to want to have it local as well. So I think a lot of our concerns in terms of the limitation and the keeping it local are being echoed in the community. So if we can find ways to do that through the bylaws and the zoning, then that would be ideal.
Now, I don't see it as a bait and switch at all. To me, it's okay, community, this is your last chance. You voted this way. Are you really sure? These are the consequences. We spent a lot of time as a board discussing it, pros and cons. The Board of Health has discussed it. The Planning Board's discussed it. We've had a community conversation. We've had forums. We've had experts. And you know, what say ye now? So.
Do you feel like I wasn't able to go to the public outreach, but was that something that came up?
No, I thought it was just more, people were trying to be more informed, they had questions, there was, I think, both sides. The last one we went to at the Nantucket Inn, there was a lot of people that were interested in kind of the co-op side of it, of how to grow it. Can we change the zoning?
Yeah.
Why did you start this?
Could it be a citizen article? If there are people that are concerned, is that something that could be a citizen article?
Yeah.
In what manner do you mean as a citizen?
As in, could someone propose there's a ban to ban?
They could probably, and they could also, they could propose to expand the zoning.
Mhm.
You know, I think citizens can do whatever they want.
And then we would have to have a special election. Or how does that work if it's a citizen article? Do you know?
It depends what the article is.
Right.
We'd really have to see the article.
I think get a litmus test of the people, you could also do that by limit it to 2 and see if they pass that general bylaw. I think people will say the same thing. I just think banning is just not the way to go. It's too risky. 60, what is it? We all in agreement, 3% said yes, but did they really know what they were voting for? We don't know. We just know that 63% said yes. That's what we do know.
Yep.
Of registered.
Of registered voters, yes, you always correct me on that.
Sorry, of votes cast.
Votes cast, 6,500 out of 9,200 voters.
I've also had friends who have grown for years, not that they're supposed to, but, you know, and they've said, hey, I don't mind if it never happens here, because now at least I'm growing and I'm not going to get in trouble. And, you know, so the whole local idea, you know, if we really are concerned about local, we allow those guys to grow and keep doing what they're doing and they don't get in trouble. And, you know, but what I worry about from the local standpoint is you bring in someone and they open up on Amelia Drive or wherever, you know, somewhere in SeaTech, and they do a bang up business and they're doing, you know, X zillion a year, whatever it is, and then they're bought out, and then the boats are legal, and all of a sudden it's coming over, and you know, I just think it's not like, if we want a craft thing, that's kind of you keep it as small as you can without the opportunity to have it bought out by, you know, by the, you know, the hedge fund money, the big guys, you know. So, but that's my sustainable Nantucket, you know, hat on, and you know, I'd rather see the money stay here. You know, I'd rather see it circulate through our own economy rather than be siphoned right off the island.
And I agree. That's where my first questions were for Andrew and Rita. How we try to keep it all here,
Yeah.
as long as possible.
Yeah, we do a lot better. Every dollar spent here circulates 5, 6, 7 times here. You know, every dollar we spend with someone that ships it off island, it's gone.
Well, maybe there are more provisions. If we're only doing 2 licenses, maybe there are more provisions that we can put in those licenses to ensure that they're non-transferable.
I think looking at every way to keep it craft and local.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
It's a good question for Katie on the 11th, as Jim said.
That's a good idea. I'd support 1, maybe 2, if we could find some way to guarantee that the guys here are going to benefit. Not, you know, I'd be more likely to support it, even though I think it's not necessary and it could harm us. But
You know, I sat with Libby and Andrew and town council, and we went through a term sheet for a host community agreement, and it's really, really detailed. I think going through that and reading it again, I feel just a little more comfortable of how structured and strenuous it's going to be for them to be successful. It's pretty controlled. I know there's things that we don't know yet, the unintended consequences, but we're all a little, that's why I want to go slow as well. Okay, any other comments, thoughts on any other articles? And then you need comment on those? Who's like, go to comments.
I just one other, on these, I still strongly think we need to model the traffic changes. So that if we go to town meeting and we want to do this and that roundabout, I think we need to be able to say, when we do this, here's what it's going to do in these other areas. And I know it's possible. We did it 25 years ago with the crappy computers and the little white dots that they had then. I'm sure it's a lot better today. And some of the concerns that people have expressed to me are that they don't want to spend money on these to just have the traffic back up everywhere else. So we need to look at, we need to model it and see to be able to, if we want to have these things pass,
And we need to make sure Richmond's money's in the bank.
I didn't say that.
I didn't.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Anybody got anything good?
I do. As I hinted at earlier, we had our second Affordable Housing Trust strategic planning session, which was excellent, and we're getting closer and closer to a final product, and we're still pushing. We've added a meeting in August so that we can have something by the end of August, our final plan. Not something, it'll be our final.
Oh, should we take that?
The final plan. And, I just wanted to reiterate that, well, I suppose we've really been looking very closely at the existing partnerships as well as partnerships that we can potentially form going forward that we're not currently availing of. And I think I've tried to make it clear that I think that understanding our role and how the select board can best support the Affordable Housing Trust, I feel that is still a very new and emerging relationship. So that's one that I'd like to see us really take up as this plan becomes more clear. And also one of the regular meeting items was the comment to the ZBA. And just to reiterate that the concerns from the Affordable Housing Trust were the density, and Brooke Moore brought up looking at ways to incentivizing to reduce the density. And if there's any way to really work with the developers to reduce that density, ways to ensure more affordability. And Linda Williams made an excellent point, and it came up a little bit in discussion tonight about the 40Bs, that she's concerned about the negative impact on the perception of affordable housing and how we keep having these big 40Bs, give 40B a horrible name and really not help with the image of affordable housing. So I thought that was a really an excellent point and one to keep in mind, particularly as we try and do more public outreach with affordable housing issues. So that was it.
Thank you, Vinny. Anything else? Libby?
I just want to mention some things that are coming up at your July 11th meeting. Thank you. The special town meeting again, as you know. We are going to have the Green Lady Host Community Agreement draft for the board to review. You'll have a term sheet for that and some other documents, and we'll be trying to get that out to you ahead of time. We've got the 2019 annual town meeting timeline. We have an all department or pertinent department water quality updates, an annual thing we've been giving to you, and then the final Surfside 40B letter so far.
Thank you. I just had real quick. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I figured you were going to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
No, I have a comment. Not a committee report. You ain't the committee report.
I was just going to do that. We met for the audit committee
Okay,
a
go
little
ahead.
earlier this year. Is that your comment?
No.
Okay. And we have the finance director and the FinCom chair. And just to start the conversation on enterprise funds. Do we want to take solid waste, home, out of enterprise for operating, and what are the benefits? What does that look like? So we had a nice 30, 45-minute discussion on that. So there was no decide anything, but it was interesting to see what the whole ramifications of that would be or not. So I think that's only that I have.
And mine is a comment. For the past few years, on an annual basis, usually in June, in executive session, we have reviewed cases, lawsuits, claims against the town, and that's been real educational process for me, and I'd encourage us to continue to do that. And so,
Now you made me think of another comment on yours, Rita, on the kind of framing the debate and the words labeling affordable housing, how it's getting a negative connotation to it. It switches for me when I got an email from Ann Kutzpah from the housing, right, about Peter Brace. And it was his whole story of how long, 20 years of him renting, and he finally got a covenant home. And when you put a face on it and you see people like Peter Brace, it's like, okay, affordable housing, community housing is a good thing. And just we kind of remember that and tell those stories, whether it's Sachem's Path or a covenant program or something else that we don't talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So I agree 40Bs take affordable housing.
Faceless. I think we do forget who we really are trying to meet the needs for. And it really is a commitment, at least from the Affordable Housing Trust, to a commitment to a diverse, socially diverse community. And I also want to just say as well that Ann Kutzpah and Housing Nantucket came up many times when we looked at the partnerships that we have. And I just want to say that, again, in what sometimes seems like a lonely endeavor, that Housing Nantucket is doing a lot to help. So.
Anything else?
I mean, just in that regard, I think that we've got to be thinking, on the housing issue outside the box a little bit. And one of the things that people sort of said strongly 20 years ago is it should be we should find incentives and ways to encourage it around the island. It shouldn't be in single pockets or, and so there's got to, we've got, it's not necessarily just the traditional ways isn't how it's going to be solved.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I got to end on another positive. The lines that were drawn, is it Candle Street, where the National Grid property is, where you get it, where Fresh is. So I walk that every day. And just because one line was drawn, bikes and people walk there, and the trucks and the cars stay right in the middle. It's just so funny how whatever that labor and that paint cost versus trying to get easements or put a sidewalk in there, just that simple line has changed that entire movement of people. I just wanted to say thank you to DPW, those little things that they're doing works.
yeah, I noticed that the other day. It's amazing.
Stand there and watch.
It's like a bike lane now.
Yep, the cars stay perfectly in line. There's 5 feet there now. Thank you for that. And I have a baby to feed in 30 minutes, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
What time?
Erica, anybody fill this away?